Morning, good afternoon, my fellow Alaskans. We are here today to live stream the public testimony for SB 52, increasing the student base allocation that they want to do down there in Juneau. This is, again, SB 52 in the Senate Finance Committee. Please take a moment right now, like and share this video. We can find it on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, at Unfiltered. You can also find this at rumble.com at Politidic here in the next 6 hours. Become a subscriber there. Help us live stream directly to them. Your support can make that happen. We're just 6 or so away from being there. Also, you can find this on our website currently, right now, live at politidic.com. And please go there, and while you're there, click our support button. Your help, your support is what makes it possible for us to be here on days like today, to be able to live stream videos like this one to all of you. Please, again, like and share this video. We are also currently facing a lawsuit for our First Amendment rights that are under attack. The political elite, the politicians, the puppet masters of those politicians don't like it when you expose their corruption for the whole world to see, and they're suing me over that. So help us fight this lawsuit. Go to our website, politidic.com, click that support button. All proceeds go right back into expanding what we do and to fight cases like this one. Looks like they've gotten started there on the other screen. I'm going to go ahead and mute mine out and bring them back in here onto the screen so that you guys can all hear what is going on.
AASB believes that SB 52 upholds the legislature's moral and constitutional responsibility of sufficiently funding Alaska's public education system. The AASB Board of Directors has adopted 3 legislative priorities for this session. They are the sufficient, sustainable, and predictable funding of education, retention and recruitment of teachers, administrators, and staff, and student wellness and safety. The state of Alaska has always statutorily filled its responsibility to establish and maintain a public education system under Article 7, Section 1 of Alaska's Constitution. The legislature's responsibility has been to appropriate funds sufficient to maintain an effective public education system. However, for over a decade, Alaska has not sufficiently invested the resources to ensure that every student receives an excellent education every day. ASB's membership unanimously approved a Resolution 2.2 urging early, adequate, equitable, and predictable funding of public education, which specifies an increase of not less than $860 to the base student allocation. This figure was put forward by the Anchorage School Board. 2 members are here with us today. As a result of the district's analysis in the early fall of the difference between the current FY23 BSA of $5,930 and an estimated inflation-adjusted value of $6,820 using the CPI Urban Alaska data. As it turns out, and we probably all know, that actual fall estimate was low because it did not include all of the 2020 inflation. ASD recalculated the BSA increase, and their estimate is that it should have been closer to $1,268 to make it even with inflation. I did a further analysis of the BSA to inflation over the past 11 years, from 2012 to 22, and I found that the BSA had only increased $250 over that time period, or a total of 4.29%. Meanwhile, based on the CPI urban data, the cumulative inflation for that same period was 24.6%. Thus, the underfunding of Alaska's public education through the BSA has been a chronic issue. Several times, additional funding outside the BSA has been provided, which has been appreciated. However, as you've heard previously, the one-time discretionary funds have not led to the stability and predictability that a statutory increase in the BSA would provide. Senate Bill 52 provides for a measured, predictable increase in the BSA over the next 3 years. An increase of $1,000 in FY24 comes much closer to matching the loss of the buying power currently experienced. Another increase of $348 in FY25 builds upon that adequacy, and then finally in FY26, the BSA is tied to a rolling average of inflation for that year. These three steps provide both the sufficiency and stability that is one of ASB's top legislative priorities. Locally elected school boards have been delegated the authority to implement a system of public education required by the Alaska Constitution. School board members are tasked with governing their districts and allocating funds to execute an educational plan. It's a highly complex task. In Alaska, school boards have no taxing authority. They therefore must rely solely on the revenue from the state, the federal government, and in organized areas, at least a minimum local contribution to fund their education. Last Friday, I attended a House Education Committee meeting where 3 rural Alaska school districts, the Lower Kuskokwim, Northwest Arctic, and Bristol Bay, described their education programs and the monumental challenges each of those districts faces in supporting their mission and vision. Overwhelmingly, staff turnover ranging from 20 to 40% was a primary challenge to them due to the uncompetitive salary and benefits, high housing costs or the lack of housing, and the high cost of living. As an example, the presenters stated that the cost of essential goods such as a gallon of milk could cost anywhere from $10 to $30 a gallon, depending on the location. And a gallon of gasoline ranged from just over $6 to almost $15. The highly uncertain nature of the annual legislative appropriation for education funding and the potential executive vetoes continually creates uncertainty that makes it difficult to sustain a maintenance of effort in an effective and efficient manner. Time and again, school boards and superintendents must make hard choices that often result in reduced staff or elimination of programs and services. These reductions often negatively impact student achievement. Pupil-teacher ratios increase. We heard that earlier today. Critical student support services such as school counselors, nurses, career and technical education programs, and career guides are often the very first positions to go. Extracurricular activities are often next, along with the arts and other electives such as advanced placement courses. All of these supports and programs help create the fabric of a local public education system woven into the composition of every Alaskan community. The compendium of all these things make American education special. Locally elected boards, elected by the same constituencies as yourselves, have been delegated the authority to implement a system of public education on behalf of Alaska. In order to do that, they rely upon state, local, and federal governments for revenue, and school boards implement the local control model that continues to serve Alaska well, but it depends upon your support. AASB strongly advocates for your support of adopting SB 52, increasing the base student allocation as an investment in Alaska's students that will pay dividends in the future. Funding outside the BSA only promotes short-sighted spending. It reduces staff retention, impairs recruitment, and ultimately can lead to a decrease in student achievement. ASB asks that this committee prioritize increasing the BSA as a definitive commitment to supporting Alaska's public school system and Alaska's future through the education of its young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garrison, for coming in this afternoon and being patient enough to wait till this afternoon to give your testimony. Do you have any questions of Mr. Garrison before he leaves? Senator Stedman.
Yeah, Mr. Garrison, I know you spent several years on the Sitka School Board, and you're been involved ever since then. So, fundamentally, we have to make a decision here. We have to have a balanced budget, and we have 2 big items that are open. One of them is our dividend that we pay out, and the other one is trying to address our education. So in your opinion, how do we balance the dividend draw or demand versus the education demand? Because clearly we don't have enough cash flow to fully fund the dividend, much less any increase in the BSA.
Mr. Garrison?
Yes, through the chair, Senator Stedman. As others have said before, that is a policy call. In reckoning back to my experience on the Sitka School Board and facing exactly the same challenges because there was only so much in the pie, and we weren't going to get more than that, we had to figure out exactly what we were going to do in terms of what we were going to fund and what we were going to let go. As the executive director of the Association of Alaska School Boards, it would be my advice to you on behalf of our members that you prioritize funding of education. Now, we've stated in a resolution that we said not less than $860 increase in the BSA. So that's what the membership feels they need in order to at least stay where we're at today, if not make up a little bit of ground. I completely understand that you're faced with a very limited budget, actually a deficit at the time being. And you're faced with weighing two great demands. One is an investment in the students and the future of the state, and the other is an investment in something that the public holds very dear. And I think any of us that have utilized the permanent fund, we do the same. I use the permanent fund to help educate my two daughters through college. That's where every dollar of our permanent fund dividend went. And it was a great thing, and it was a wonderful benefit. And everybody has to make different decisions. But on behalf of school boards, I would say that we would advocate that a priority for education funding should be placed over the permanent fund. And you're faced with almost an impossible decision, how much of each one to do. And all I can do on behalf of school boards is tell you what school boards need, and then leave it to you and for you to continue to ask questions as the process proceeds. What do we need to do? How do we get there? What is going to get us our best investment?
Follow-up, Senator Stedman? Okay, any further questions of Mr. Garrison by members of the committee? If not, we'll go ahead and go on into public testimony. Thank you very much for coming up and being patient this afternoon, Mr. Garrison. First up in public testimony, we have Mr. Hollerman. Please come on up and give us your testimony. You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I am here currently as a member of the Anchorage School Board for the past 6 years. And prior to that, for 20 years, I experienced the way we fund education as a classroom teacher. And I'd like to just take a moment and sort of give you that perspective as quickly as possible. But starting out by saying first, I want to thank the Senate for what is a clear commitment to do something this session. It's encouraging, it means a great deal, and I realize we don't know how much that'll be or what the final form will be, but the commitment means a lot because our classroom teachers are very committed. But when you have uncertainty, that commitment doesn't produce the kind of results that you want to see happen. It takes a long time to get good at teaching, and sometimes older teachers get a little bit of a rap for being tired and not as enthusiastic as they should be. I've yet to ever meet anybody that said they did their best work the first couple of years they were in the classroom. Everybody got better as they stayed there longer. And they invested in what they did, they invested in the resources that they brought to kids. But if funding is shrinking or staying flat while inflation moves forward, you get involuntary displacements. You get programs that maybe cost $400 or $500 a year that we used to fund, and they get cut because they help to get a little bit of funds back, but they don't devastate a school or a program or whatnot. These are sort of the invisible side effects of not having an annual adjustment for inflation. of not keeping us where we are from year to year. One, you wind up at a year like this where if we're going to make up ground, we're talking about huge numbers that are difficult. But also in the intervening years, you have people that do the assessment, and if you're not sure you're going to be able to do this for several years, it may not be worth doing it for one. It's just a practical call that educators in the classroom have to make in the same way you have to make really difficult financial choices as well. So I do hope for a great outcome, something that kind of makes us whole back several years as we go forward, but also going into the future. The continuation of annual adjustments for inflation that would be somewhat slight, and I think logically a pretty easy lift, will change the kind of production you get from our workforce in education. Again, thank you all for where you're at this year and what you're doing, and for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Mr. Holloman, thank you very much for coming up this afternoon. Next we have is Kelly Lessons, Miss Lessons. And after that is going to be Corin Marks, if you want to get ready to come on up and give your testimony. You got 2 minutes, Miss Lessons.
Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Lessons. I'm a member of the Anchorage School Board, and I'm speaking in support of SB 52. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. I'm going to use my precious 2 minutes and say that again. Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. This is the guiding philosophy behind the model of governance that the Anchorage School Board has recently adopted. To that end, we have prioritized 3 specific, measurable long-term goals relating to K-2 reading proficiency, grade 3 through 9 math proficiency, and high school students' college and career readiness. We've adopted a multi-year calendar for regularly monitoring our progress towards these goals. We design our annual budgets to support them, and we have a new superintendent whose mission is to execute those goals. In less than a year, ASD has identified new efficiencies. We've adopted an evidence-based K-3 ELA curriculum, and we're poised to update our algebra, geometry, Algebra 2 curricula, I think at our next board meetings. We're exploring a realignment of school start times, and we're making strategic investments in teachers' professional development. There is a vision in ASD, and it's aligned with these goals. We are changing adult behaviors in Anchorage, and I think that these are going to translate to long-term improvements in our student outcomes. But continued flat funding will put our goals for improved student outcomes at tremendous risk. Our FY25 budget is due in about 10 months. That deficit is projected to be $85 million. But your changes in adult behaviors right now, your choice and your peers' choice to make legislative investments in our students could enable ASD to reverse next year's increase to our pupil-teacher ratios. We could invest strategically in highly effective educators. We could pull key levers, investing more in professional development, for example, that will improve student outcomes and increase our students' workforce readiness. We want these goals to succeed. Thank you for understanding the urgency of the situation.
Ms. Lessons, thank you very much. Next up we have is Corin Marks. One after that, if you want to come on up and join us at the table, is Patty Brown.
I'm Corinne Marks, a high school teacher in Juneau. Thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of SB 52. Many people share how much they value education and teachers. Working 2 years at a U.S. Embassy school, I experienced the realities of being sincerely valued. This time proved to me that more funding does make a difference. I was happier, I was healthier, because I wasn't beaten down by a lack of funding. Classes were guaranteed no larger than 20. Preparation time was twice what I currently have. I was able to do what research tells educators they need to do: plan with colleagues, assess student data, provide feedback, and communicate with families. Proper funding does make a difference for our students. As flat funding continues, healthcare, housing, and food costs increase. To compensate, I have taken on work as an adjunct at the UAS School of Education. I am training Alaska's future educators and watching them leave for California, Illinois, Oregon, and Maryland. Colleagues are also leaving for better opportunities outside of Alaska. More reasonable work expectations, better pay, and a pension. Over my 25 years, my job description has expanded from being a teacher to include mediator, assessor, counselor, coach, mentor, snack provider. We need to be able to look at future educators and tell them they will love the job and be fairly compensated. We need educators to seek out jobs in the state of Alaska and stay here. We need the best possible future for our communities, schools, and most importantly, our students, the future of this state. I would not have to be here today if the legislature truly appreciated the importance of education, because raising the BSA would not be an issue. It would simply be done. Have courage, work together, and fund the future of our state. Increase the BSA. Thank you.
Ms. Marks, thank you very much. Next up we have is Patty Brown. Ms. Brown, and after that is Emma Melkerson. If you're ready to come on up. Go ahead, Ms. Brown.
My name's Patty Brown, and as a teacher retired from 22 years of teaching in Alaska, most of it in Haines, and now an educational consultant, today I'm speaking on behalf of the Alaska Science Teachers Association. I'm also the daughter of 2 public school teachers. My sister was a teacher as well, and my brother was a university professor. I know what education does to improve lives, and I know how hard teachers work. The theme for my own family was lifelong learning. Investing in schools is investing in community and a healthy and productive future for all. An increase of $1,000 in the BSA with $350 next year and inflation proofing would be ideal. Currently, the BSA is stalled at $59.60. In 2019, the State Board of Education adopted the science standards for Alaska. The Department of Education and Early Development has provided some web resources and even training videos as a start toward implementation. Many districts have made their teachers and school administrators aware of those standards, but most teachers who've communicated with us say they do not feel like they have made the shift toward rigor and accessibility for all that's mandated by those standards. Some elementary teachers tell us they are allowed very little time to teach to those standards. There's little to no professional development provided to teachers, which is essential to incorporate the 3-dimensional learning needed. I'd be the first to say that money doesn't automatically improve education. Something different has to be done as well. Because most states in the country have made the shift to incorporating science practices, cross-cutting concepts, as well as concise disciplinary core ideas, there are resources available. Money added to the BSA could be earmarked for improving science education K-12 for every student. It can buy materials, pay for specialists to give professional development every year, even to hiring teaching specialists in K-5, since many elementary teachers are being asked to focus heavily on reading and math basics. I will add that the context of science is known to be particularly inspiring and motivating to youngest learners, so more and better science and engineering education will also help achieve goals in reading, writing, and math. Additionally, place-based education, particularly through strong science investigations, noticing patterns, and promoting indigenous ways of knowing, has proven itself to be hugely reinforcing. Additional funding can be used to get students outside to explore their natural and cultural environments. Science also is strongly connected to career and technical education goals. Good science instruction teaches thoughtful problem solving and builds professional skills in many growing technical fields. Public education has always been about contributions to society. It's imperative that funding for science education become a priority, and an increase in BSA could help achieve that. Thank you.
Brown, thank you very much. Next is Emma Melkerson. Ms. Melkerson. After that is going to be Chris Heidemann.
Good afternoon. My name is Emma Melkerson, and I'm currently a kindergarten teacher at Sit-E-T Chinook Glacier Valley here in Juneau. This is my 12th year as an educator. I spent 11 years in the Northwest Arctic Borough School District in the village of Kivalina. I worked at McQueen School, the very last school in the state to be replaced by the funds that were allocated by the K.I.S.S versus State of Alaska. The lawsuit was filed to ensure that the state of Alaska met its constitutional obligation that the legislature shall, by general law, establish and maintain a system of public schools open to all children of the state. Now the children of Kivalina attend Alaska's newest school, K.I.S.S School. However, the Northwest Arctic Borough School District, along with most Alaskan school districts, are looking at a multi-million-dollar projected budget deficit. It took a lawsuit to build the building. It should be common sense to adequately fund one. I asked my kindergartners this morning what they thought I should tell you, and the 23, 5, and 6-year-olds that are in my classroom right now want you to know that they are important, that they love school, and they love the adults and programs available to them. They want you to think that they're important and worth fighting for. They believe that there should never be a question about where the money for their school should come from. My 23 kids are the future of this state. They will be the ones to occupy those seats 30-ish years from now, ones that will ensure that Alaska continues to grow. I hope that they look back on days like today, years from now, and know that a change was made and that you lawmakers, as they called you, believe that they are enough to put them first. Your colleagues in the lower house of the legislature proved recently that they have the will to act to ensure the funding for Alaska's school next year. I implore you to not only have the will to act, but have the will to invest in Alaska's most precious resource, our children, and make a permanent increase to the BSA, an increase that is substantial, one that accounts for inflation, and one that ensures that I will not have to sit in this seat across from you again next year, begging you to provide the resources that keep highly skilled and dedicated educators in the rooms next to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out this afternoon. Next we have is Chris Heidemann.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and thank you all for your service to the state. My name is Chris Heidemann. I'm a parent of 2 students in the Juneau School District. I'm a teacher at Juneau Douglas High School, and I am currently the president of the Juneau Education Association. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what I see flat funding doing to the profession of education in the state. And I'd like you to consider for a moment the fact that you have vacancies in all of your urban school districts right now at all levels. Something that really would have been unthinkable 10 years ago, when we used to have 50+ applicants for all of our vacancies. And the fact of the matter is the flat funding is causing the education jobs in the state of Alaska to be completely uncompetitive on the open market, making it so that we cannot attract quality educators into our state and into the association of people that I represent. At this point, districts are not able to offer wages and benefits that make people want to come here and work. The graduates from in-state at our in-state education programs overwhelmingly choose to go out of state for better wages, benefits, and a defined benefit pension. And those few that we can attract to our state leave after a year or 2 of having their Alaskan adventure. So I'm speaking as an educator, as a parent, and as a leader in my association. I'm asking you to pass a substantial and permanent increase to the BSA to save the profession in the state, because it is in decline and it is not competitive with the other states in the union right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming up this afternoon. Next we have Elizabeth Heidemann. Please state your name for the record and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you also for your service to the state. My name is Elizabeth Sidden. I live here in Juneau. I am here in my personal capacity today as a parent of a 3rd grader, but I am also a member of the Juneau School Board for the last 5 years. I'm here today to speak about support an increase to the BSA, and I urge you to continue advocating to your colleagues outside of this committee and in the House for an increase to the BSA. An increase to the BSA will provide sustained stability for our districts, our teachers, and our families across the state. I know you're familiar and you've heard stories this legislative season about the effects that flat funding coupled with rising costs have had on districts. So today I'll just provide a couple different personal experiences to help you understand sort of the flavor. Our son is in 3rd grade. So if you do the math, he was a kindergartner when COVID hit. He spent nearly his entire 1st grade on Zoom in our living room. Sorry. And that's probably a story you've heard before. We know that that happened. But I also want to add our son has disabilities. So that meant he had physical therapy on Zoom. He had occupational therapy on Zoom. And yes, he had speech therapy on Zoom. So he and his classmates are now 3rd graders. They lost significant foundational learning time, and it is upon us to support them and provide them what they need to, I hate the term catch up, but support them in their learning growth from here forward. I'll tell a second story that hopefully won't make me as emotional. I spent this morning at Thunder Mountain High School in my capacity as a fisheries biologist and a local scientist here in Juneau. And they have a Future Women of Science club. And they asked me, how can educators encourage young women to pursue careers in STEM? And I'll tell you what I told them, because I actually think it applies to all of us, not just educators. But first I said, we need to provide them opportunities. We need to show them what's out there in the world that are possible for them, the careers and the life choices for them to make. But secondly, we need to tell them that they can do it. Whatever sparks their interest, we need to tell them that they can go do it, and we have to encourage them. And so I think we're all responsible to do that in whatever hat we're wearing, whether we're their parents or their school board members or their representatives. We have to provide them opportunities and encourage them that they can do it. So thank you for this bill and for your continued advocacy for all of our kids. They're very worth it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out this morning, especially with that heartfelt testimony.
Sorry, I can't help it.
Next we have is Caleb Shane.
Hello, I'm Caleb Shane, and I'm a student at Montessori. I'm here to testify in favor of raising the BSA. If you don't raise it, it will be harder for our events like our school play to happen in the evenings when our families can join. We won't be able to go on a trip for our class Odyssey, which we have raised money for all year at our class store, Juneau, where we sell coffee and other things. Our schools are also losing teachers. We currently have a class of 4 different grades altogether because one of the teachers left during COVID, and it is extremely hard to find a teacher who is trained to teach at a Montessori classroom. And why should they come to Alaska when there are better pay and benefits in other places? And without these teachers, you are forcing class sizes to get larger and make it harder for teachers to teach and students to learn, which will force more teachers to leave and more students to learn less. So you are shortchanging our education and the future of Alaska as a state. Thank you for your time, and raise the BSA.
Thank you very much for coming out, Ms. Shane. Next we have Suna Shane.
Hello, my name is Sana Shane. And I'm representing myself. I'm a student at Montessori Borealis and have been since kindergarten. I'm in 7th grade now. I'm in favor of raising the base student allocation. Having my Spanish class and art class is one of the best parts of my day. I know that DeSanta Kahini has lost some extracurricular classes due to not having enough funding, including Spanish. We need to be able to let our next generation of kids get the education and exploration every child needs in school. This is our future we're talking about. We need smart, creative minds who are given the right tools to expand their knowledge. Please raise the BSA and fund our future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Senate, we have a question from Senator Bishop.
Welcome. Thank you for your testimony. So tell me what you're going to do when you graduate. You got a career?
I'm kind of interested in psychology.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Senna. We appreciate you being here. Next up, we have Bay White, following Emily Ferry. Welcome, Bay. If you could state your name and affiliation and begin your 2-minute testimony. Thank you for being here.
Hello, my name is Bay White. I am in favor of raising the BSA. I feel like raising the BSA would help us out a lot, and without it, we could lose a lot of extracurricular activities like music and art and going on trips and doing fun projects. Montessori provides a lot of amazing things for us, and without a higher BSA, we might not be able to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bay. We appreciate you being here. Next up, Emily Ferry, followed by Summer Custer. Thank you, Ms. Ferry. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thanks so much. You can sit, and Chase is going to help me demo here. Great. So my name is Emily Ferry. I live here in Juneau. I'm a Montessori Borealis site council parent, so that's my role here today. We came, the group of students behind us, we feel like it's our responsibility as residents of Juneau to help represent students from around the state. So we're not just advocating for our school, but for all students in all schools here. And we had several peers that declined to come because they wanted to be at school. So I'll just say that again. They wanted to be at school, which is a great thing, right? Like, let's celebrate that. There's a lot of stuff that we see going right in our schools, and Chase can hold up these models of balsa wood bridges that were built and tested as part of the occupations class. Their science class is taught through the lens of occupations. And this was the engineering unit. So they got to test out and try out what it was like to be an engineer. And my son now wants to be an engineer as a result of this formative experience in 7th grade. So this is the type of stuff we want to keep going in our schools. You've heard time and again that it's a real challenge to keep it going. I think about our budget as a body, our schools being in hypothermia, and we've sent all the blood to our main organs, right? The heart and those central organs. But our fingers and our toes, those are really important. And I fear that if we don't increase the BSA, that will have dire consequences. We can only be in hypothermia for so long. So in conclusion, another thing we talk a lot about in addition to responsibility is contribution. I personally am a fan of contributing towards my children's education, and I hope the rest of the state is also in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferry. We appreciate you being here. Next up is someone I went to school with here in Juneau, Summer Custer, followed by Matthew Schwarting. Ms. Custer, welcome. Please place yourself on the record and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Summer Custer. I am a teacher in the Juneau School District, teacher to these students I'm really proud of right now that you just heard speak, and a parent to 2 children. When I was hired to teach Spanish, I was told I would have to advocate for my job, and they were right. Every year, I was told I'd probably be cut, and every year, I wrote letters and showed up to testify. Advocating became a second job. Eventually, the Spanish program was cut at Kahini Middle School, and I no longer advocate for my job. I currently also work at Montessori Borealis. Instead, I advocate for my son, who is entering middle school next year. He will be in classes of 40 plus. He will take his first music class along with musicians who have played for years, lumped together into one big class because there are no other classes to choose from. I advocate for my daughter who has autism and is the reason I drive an hour out of my way every day so she can be in a school that doesn't have 28 students, because that's the class size for a 3rd grade class in our neighborhood school. I advocate for my colleagues, 2 of whom were assaulted by students because there wasn't enough staff to fulfill the required student-to-teacher ratio. Why? No one wants to take on that kind of job without a pension and mediocre wages, and 1 out of every 5 teachers in Alaska leaves the profession within the year. It costs Alaska less than $6,000 to educate a kid, and approximately $65,000 to incarcerate an adult. Graduating more kids will reduce the prison population. Think about the savings. Also, let's consider the multiplier effect. Teachers spend more money in their communities than those who work in the oil and mining sectors, who often commute from other places. More money spent in education is more money that stays in the state. Alaska ranks 49th in education, 49th in high school graduation, but #1 in fiscal stability. We have resources. We've already forward funded fiscal year 24. So let's fund what matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Custer. We appreciate you being here. Next, Matthew Schwarting, followed by Julie Smith. Thank you for being here, Matthew. Please state your name and affiliation and begin your 2-minute testimony.
My name is Matthew Schwarting, and I am here speaking for myself. And I'd just like to speak about how great the school system is and how I know our teachers really care a lot about what we're doing and where we go later in our lives. And I just think that those teachers are really not staying because they know that they don't have as much pay as they do in other places. And I think that this bill will really bring more great teachers to the state. And I think that that will be amazing for everybody in the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. We appreciate you coming today. Next up, Julie Smith, followed by Sharon Denton. Do we have Julie Smith? Welcome to Senate Finance. Ms. Smith, if you could state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Okay, I'm Sharon Denton, and I'm from Juneau. I am a reading interventionist at the Montessori School, which is interesting. I didn't know they were going to be here. But I'm really proud because 2 of my former students are in the audience.
Wonderful.
So I'm here to give you maybe a personal story on why the student-based allocation needs to be increased. I'm retired from the Juneau School District from 23 years, working as a spec ed, reading, and classroom teacher. But I've been with Montessori for 6 years, working part-time, teaching struggling readers. And when I started 6 years ago, I was given 2 books of the Sunday System, which is a systematic, very explicit reading program that teaches basically phonics and words and sentences, but no stories. So I supplement with books from the library, which I have to go and sort through and pick and whatnot. But I do love real books. And I have been given no new materials in 6 years of teaching. I have spent at least $1,000 on supplemental stuff that I've found either online or at an education store in South Carolina. And I also purchased an iPad to give the required testing of the Amplify DIBELS progress monitoring, and 3 times a year you give it to all the kids, and then for the kids who really need it, every 2 weeks. So I bought the iPad, and I think there needs to be more money for materials. I also think that if you want to know where to cut, testing would be it, because far too much time is spent testing the kids for no apparent results, other than ranking them and diminishing them.
Thank you, Ms. Denton. If you could wrap up your testimony. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Okay, last up in the room, we have Lisa Egan-Lagerquist. Welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Hi, my name is Lisa Egan-Lagerquist. I am a former JDHS teacher. I'm a parent of 2, one at Juneau Community Charter School and one at the high school, freshman. I'm also an example of a teacher who has left the profession for personal reasons, but has not returned because of wages and because of increased class sizes and stress that teachers are on. But that's a testimony I did another time. I'm totally here to support the increase of the BSA. And about 2 weeks ago, I sat hoping to testify in front of the Education Committee for about 2 hours and never got to speak. And I really want to speak to what I heard people testifying then, because I'm guessing that people here have heard the anti-raising. And the big argument really was to invest in the child, not in the system. And they equated that, so don't give money to the system because give it to the child. I think they were advocating for private schools and for charter schools and for homeschools. So I want to counter that argument just in case you hear other people testify it or you listen to that other. First of all, if you think about it, if you're advocating for private schools, that might be fine in 10 to 15 years, but my sons need a good school next year. And in Juneau, we do not have enough private schools to school everyone. So that doesn't work, maybe for the future, but not for my sons. They need good schools now, and I think we have them in the public schools. Second, the homeschool thing. Well, COVID, I always thought I would never homeschool a child, and COVID just reinforced that 100%. My older son did kind of okay, and my younger son could not sit in front of a screen without me sitting next to him, so I had to cut my work down to half, which of course, as a family, that was really hard for our family, but you do what you have to do. So homeschool does not work for everyone. Third, their idea about charter schools somehow fixing this, I have a feeling that it was rhetoric from maybe national thing, because in some states, charter schools aren't part of school districts, but in Alaska, they have to be. So it really isn't a solution either, or does not make sense to say don't raise the BSA because you're gonna support charter schools. Nonsensical.
Thank you. If you could please wrap up.
I would love to wrap up. Just want to say I would agree with Chris Heidemann, who said we're having trouble hiring people at the Juneau Community Charter School. Every year we are looking for new staff, and it's really hard to get anyone to apply. So thank you. Please support the BSA increase.
Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate you joining us today. Next, we will move to our LIOs. First, we will start in Homer and then move to Seward. So first up in Homer, Mako Haggerty, please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony. Welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Mako Haggerty. That's Mako is pronounced like taco. Anyway, thank you for this opportunity. Please support Senate Bill 52. I'm sorry that to see there's only a few of you in the room. I know the Finance Committee is a little bit larger, and it would be nice if this message got out to everybody. But so far, sitting here listening, I haven't heard anybody opposed to this bill. You know, my kids have already benefited from their education provided by the state of Alaska and the Kenai Peninsula Borough. But that doesn't mean that I don't continue to benefit from a good school system. It makes my community a better place when all of our kids, and those are the young ones growing up right now, get a good education. Education is the #1 priority for a strong, healthy society. That strength starts at K-12, and it's something that the state needs to support. Please invest in our future. Please strengthen Alaska. Please raise the BSA. Please support Senate Bill 52. Thank you.
Thank you, Mako. We have a question from Senator Bishop.
I pass, ma'am. I'll let you take care of that.
Great. Thank you, Mako. We appreciate you calling in today. And I will note for the record that the co-chairs are in a meeting, but they are listening in at this time. Next, we'll go to Seward and then Sitka. In Seward, we have Micah Van Buskirk. Welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Hello, my name is Micah Van Buskirk, and I'm a parent of 2 high school students in Seward, and I'm also the president of our local site council for our 3 schools. I am here to testify in support of Senate Bill 52. The lack of predictable and adequate increases to the BSA in recent years has caused extreme losses of programs in our 3 schools. Every year, our district's expenses, like all of ours, have increased. Increases in large fixed costs such as health insurance and utilities over the last 5 years have led to drastic reductions in staff in these central programs. Small communities like Seward are being heavily impacted by the lack of BSA increase. Even small staff changes make a huge difference here. I wanted to share a few of the things that we've seen in our community over the last few years. Our schools have had to consolidate grades, increase class sizes to over 30 students. We have lost all art, drama, and music in our 3 schools. We have lost most of our other electives, and we are now losing core classes and are having to heavily rely on distance education classes. Over 80% of our high school students in Seward have to take 1 to 3 distance ed classes just to meet their graduation requirements every year. Our athletics team's travel budgets have been reduced to almost zero. Meets or practices are being canceled. Parents are having to leave work to drive their kids to events. Students are having to raise $10,000 plus per sport just to be able to compete. In addition to our other sports struggling, our only community pool is now being closed. This is the pool that produced an Olympic gold medalist and is very popular in our community. Especially since COVID, our students need actual teachers in their classrooms. They need these healthy activities and these competitions to drive them to succeed. Counselors and student support staff are being cut, which further disengages students from actively planning and participating and choosing their educational pathways. Students are disengaging as programs, electives, and sports are eliminated, and they're asked to do more classes through distance education. Our families and our teachers are leaving our small community to find opportunities in larger cities, even those who love Seward.
Micah, if you could please wrap up your comments.
Okay. Please make predictable, sustainable increases to the BSA this year. This will allow our district to plan and make long-term hiring decisions, not one-time funding that leaves our district and our students with a horrible uncertainty. Please also find a way to forward fund education in the same way that you found a way to forward fund the state ferry system in 2021. Our kids deserve that same predictability and stability that the ferry system does, if not more.
Great. Thank you very much, Micah. We appreciate you calling in today. We're going to move to Sitka and then Ketchikan. In Sitka, we have Carrie Sagal. Welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Hello, my name is Carrie Sagal. I work for the Sitka School District. I'm here representing myself, and I would be in the room with you if it weren't for a volcano in Russia spewing ash. I'm calling to support Senate Bill 52, an increase in the BSA. Without that increase, Sitka will lose 15 positions at a time when schools across Alaska and the nation are grappling with COVID gaps. We hear reports that students are coming to school with behavioral and cognitive gaps. Will Sitka School District cut kindergarten and SPED teachers? Students are expressing mental health and emotional problems. Will we cut counselors? Students come to school for art, music, books. Will we cut those positions? The only reason many children come to school, I'm at the end of my school career. Personally, I don't stand to gain anything from an increase in the BSA other than as a human being and a citizen of Alaska. Last night I went to a trauma-informed training where we worked together to create a traditional tribal village, one at which the children were placed at the center, surrounded by their elders and parents, aunts and uncles, there to protect and nurture them. I want Alaska to be that village where children are at the center and every other person in the village knows that our children are our primary concern. I would raise the BSA at the expense or with having a more modest dividend or the implementation of an income tax. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carrie, and we hope everyone in Sitka stays safe. Next, we will move to the Ketchikan LIO, followed by Kenai. First up in Ketchikan is Diane Gabatayo. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony. Welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you. Members of the Senate Finance Committee, my name is Diane Gabatayo, and I support SB 52, a permanent BSA increase versus one-time funding. I am aware that the House passed an amendment to the state budget, one-time $175 million. While I am grateful, this is a Band-Aid approach and provides one-year survival and sustainability, but truly only supports status quo. It is established data here that years of flat funding of the BSA has resulted in Alaska school districts losing $1,433 per enrollment since 2012 due to inflation, equaling a total loss of $7,313,101 in state funding during FY23 for Ketchikan schools and reduce spending power at pre-2012 levels. As we seek to implement the READS Act, we will need significant increase in BSA funding to fulfill the ambitious goals of this program. Year to year, unreliable funding undermines meaningful outcomes and progress. It is a challenge to develop a comprehensive program with unpredictable funding. I am certain you all appreciate the importance of reliable revenue. For you, it is the fluctuation of oil prices. For school districts, we build our budgets on hopeful legislative appropriations, which also fluctuate. A meaningful, substantial BSA increase such as SB 52 is the answer to that need, as it also addresses inflation. The Assembly here in Ketchikan and the Ketchikan School Board strongly urge the Alaska Legislature and the Governor to significantly and appropriately increase the base student allocation to adequately fund education for all Alaska students and to support districts with long-term, stable, and predictable funding, such as SB 52. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Diane. We appreciate your time today. Next is the Ketchikan Superintendent, Michael Robbins. Welcome, Mr. Robbins. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony. Mr. Robbins, are you available?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. We can hear you now. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Michael Robbins, and I am the Superintendent of Schools representing the Ketchikan Gateway Borough School District. I am testifying today in support of Senate Bill 52. Stable, predictable funding is necessary to ensure districts can attract and retain high-quality educators. The base of student allocation has only been increased $30 since 2016, and the impact of inflation during that time has created significant loss of purchasing power for school districts. In the Ketchikan Gateway Borough School District, we have seen the impact of insufficient funding. Because of an increased health insurance of over 8% in the past 2 years, an increase in fuel costs, general maintenance and supplies due to inflation in those 2 years. If funding isn't increased, we will be forced to reduce 48.50 positions from our general operating budget in all areas, including 20 teaching positions. Retention of younger teachers will be dramatically decreased. We are losing the future of Alaska educators. Due to teacher cuts, our schools will see larger class sizes in all grades, an increase of 3 students per class in the elementary school. We have proposed a reduction of school administrators, which leads to less support for teachers in the classroom. Recruiting of teachers and administrators has become more difficult in the high needs areas, such as special education and at the director level, with the uncertainty of budgets from year to year. With an increased BSA, the district would have the opportunity to provide more mental health services and counseling services for our students, expand our restorative practice program that will help students stay in school, restoration of our depleted fund balance, and help with the implementation of the READS Act. Reliable funding is key to improving school and student outcomes by stabilizing schools and reducing educational turnover. Please consider increasing as well as inflation-proofing the BSA to ensure Alaska schools can continue to serve students with the quality education they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. We are glad that you were able to call in today. Finally, in Ketchikan, we have Bob Hewitt. And then we will go to the Kenai LIO. Mr. Hewitt, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Yeah, my name is Bob Hewitt. I'm a retired educator from Ketchikan. I'm testifying today in support of SB 52. As a school district employee of Ketchikan for 37 years, 26 as an administrator, I feel I have a good grasp on what makes a solid school district. In the past several years, I have witnessed insufficient funds in our school district, and it has had a negative impact on students, teachers, parents, and administrators. The price of doing school business gets more expensive each year, and it's imperative that we have additional funds in order to provide a solid education for our students. Reliable, predictable funding will allow us to plan budgets and programs in advance and serve students and families. Please consider increasing the BSA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hewitt. We appreciate your time. We will now go to the Kenai LIO, where we have Patty Truesdell. Welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you. My name is Patty Truesdell, and I've lived and worked on the Kenai Peninsula and raised my family there for over 50 years. I'm a proud retired public school teacher, and I currently serve on the Kenai Peninsula School Board. I also volunteer 4 days a week in my local elementary school. I strongly support Senate Bill 52 and an increase in the base student allocation. I've heard a lot of good things today, and I certainly want to thank everyone on the committee for their interest in allowing me to testify. But I want to just give you a situation that I came up with this week when I was taking off my badge after I'd been at my local elementary school volunteering in a 2nd grade class. I mean, you've heard everything and they're all good. So I'm going to tell you something that I heard that maybe you need to hear. When I first came on the board 4 years ago, one of the things that we did was we hired through a grant 6 elementary counselors. And I really was proud to be part of that. I was brand new on the board, and I was very proud of the fact that we were able to hire these counselors to put in our elementary schools. And remember, the school that I have in my district is the largest elementary school out of 42, in our school district. And so we have this wonderful counselor, and in 4 years he's put together a wonderful program that has been shown with our PTSA, and we're very proud of it. And I have watched as a volunteer him work with the children, all of the children, and then eventually with parents in small groups. So when I came out to hang up my badge, that principal came out with tears in her eyes and said, our counselor has resigned to take another position. Not because he wanted to, but because we can't promise him a position next year. That's the real world we're living in. So I thank you for taking my testimony. That's what we're living in. I know my time is up, so I don't want to be disrespectful. I thank you all, but we're losing good people. I support increasing the BSA. We're losing good people. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. We appreciate you calling in today. We are going to move to our off-net callers. I will note we are going in the order the calls were received, and we have over 60 folks waiting to testify, so we will no longer be adding people to the queue. If we need another round of public testimony, you will have an opportunity then. So first up in Anchorage is Eleanor Poe, followed by Beverly Russell. Eleanor, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Hello, I am Eleanor Poe calling in from Anchorage, just for me, and I am in support of the Senate Bill 52. I am a high school student in ASD, so a little bit of a student perspective here. It kind of sucks to be holding this hearing when no one else can be here, but that's fine. The student-teacher ratio at my school is going to be very badly affected because of the essentially decreasing BSA because of inflation. We already have a very small school, and my Algebra 2 class is getting really, really large to the point that there are not enough chairs for everyone. Next year, we are losing 4 positions due to a low enrollment number, and because of this low enrollment number, the base student allocation has not given us enough funds. We're losing 4 teachers. Class sizes are going to go even bigger, which will be detrimental for everyone involved, as the students will not be able, that's us, we the students will not be able to have as much one-on-one time with the teachers, and the teachers will have to combat now with the struggles of reaching a full class's attention and then some. The teachers are under a lot of stress because of this. My art teacher doesn't have enough supplies, and he really wishes he did because he wants us to be as creative as we possibly could. My chemistry teacher doesn't have enough supplies, but he feels like he can't order them because the school can't afford it. We just really need more money. That's the whole story. Please raise the BSA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. We appreciate your call today. Next up is Beverly Russell with the Alaska Native Sisterhood Glacier Valley Camp, followed by Desmona Stevick. Ms. Russell, please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Good afternoon. I'm Beverly Russell here in Juneau, and I support SB 52. I represent the Alaska Native Sisterhood Glacier Valley Camp 70. We're an organization that believes in education. The Alaska Constitution Article 7, Section 1 calls for establishing and maintaining our schools. The base student allocation has not increased in 7 years. The BSA has not kept up with inflation, and school districts see costs of fuel, insurance, transportation, shipping, supplies, and school maintenance rising annually. The increase in SBA will allow schools to more adequately meet their costs, which are ever increasing. Alaska is unique in that there are many smaller schools in rural communities with some off-the-road system, thus making the rural school costs exorbitant. Many of these rural communities do not have other local resources to adequately cover costs, thus making their decision what cost to prioritize difficult. The flat funding to education is effectively a cut for schools and programs for our children. We'd like to have reasonable class sizes so that our children can get the attention from their teachers. Teachers can better assess these students needing extra programs. Please let us invest in our children's education to improve student learning and support SB 52, which will provide school districts with more predictable and stable funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. We sure appreciate you taking the time to call in. Next, Desmona Stevic with the Alaska Native Sisterhood Camp 70 here in Juneau, followed by Francesca Alagreza. Desmona, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Senate Bill 52. My name is Desmona Stevic. I am president of the Alaska Native Sisterhood, Glacier Valley Camp 70, and I speak on behalf of Camp 70 in strong support of SB 52. Alaska's public education system has been severely eroding in recent years. Although the real costs of education have risen by 24.6% since 2011, the base student allocation has risen by less than 5%. We're starving the system and increasingly falling behind in our financial support for our public schools. This is reflected in lagging academic performance, high rates of teacher turnover, unfilled positions, and educators leaving the profession or being forced to leave Alaska for other states with more competitive compensation and working conditions. K2 recently reported that 35 educators in Juneau have submitted their paperwork to leave the district at the end of this school year. The Alaska Native Sisterhood has always staunchly supported education. There is very little that is of greater importance to the future of Alaska and the future of our children and grandchildren than our public education system. Without adequate investment in educating our children, they will not be prepared to become the workforce and leaders that Alaska needs to ensure a positive future. ANS Glacier Valley Camp 70 supports SB 52 and an increase in the BSA in fiscal year 2024 with prescribed increases in future years to meet inflation and increased costs. Sustained investment in our public education system is the foundation for a prosperous future for Alaska and for our children. Please increase the BSA. Ganeshish.
Thank you very much for calling in with your testimony today. Next in Anchorage is Francesca Alagreza, followed by Rich Catahay in Cake. Francesca, if you could please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony. Welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. My name is Francesca Alagreza. I do not support SB 52. I do not support raising the BSA. The current teaching curriculum can't provide above a 30% proficiency in reading and math. Failing children's and adults' PSE is not going to help. Some families rely on their PSEs to support basic living expenses. This will be a huge tax levy on families. Investing into a failing system is investing in failure. Let families decide how they want to spend their royalties. Representatives of the people are saying that they know how to spend our money more efficiently than us, and yet they think stealing money from others is okay. and can still not fix a deficit problem. Education gets more and more money, yet we get the same results year after year, failure. Senator Bert Stedman, Senate Finance Co-Chair, is quoted saying, "We're going to have to make a choice. Do we want to teach our kids to cash checks, or do we want to teach them to read and write and do arithmetic?" We are already not educating our children beyond 30% proficiency, so maybe we should be teaching them some financial responsibilities and how to spend their money wisely. We should be teaching them morals that stealing from others is wrong, even if you really want it bad and think you can use it better. It doesn't make it right when it is theft. You can always pick, click, give what you would like, or you can afford to donate what you like if you would. We cannot look to our representatives to be experts on finance when our government cannot work within its budget. Where did the COVID 200+ million go that our schools received to mask our children? Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. We appreciate you taking the time to call in. Next in cake is Richard Cadahay, and then followed by Phyllis Morrow. Rich, if you're available, please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Rich Cadahay. I am the Superintendent Principal of K.I.S.S School District, advocating for our students. I'm calling in support of Senate Bill 52. Stable, predictable funding is necessary to ensure districts can attract and retain high-quality educators. The base student allocation has only been increased by $30 since 2016, and the impact of inflation during that time has created a significant loss of purchasing power for school districts. KCSD has worked hard for years with our budgeting and financial oversight to sustain our bare bones K-12 school staffing and programs. And with education quality altering inflation cost increases, we will be forced to further reduce staffing and programs beyond our control to pay for utilities, goods, commodities, transportation, and insurance. In the K-City School District, we have seen the impact of insufficient funding and inflation. Health insurance increased by 6%. Property, plant, equipment, and liability insurance increased by 30%. FY21 was $66,710, and FY23 was $96,402. Sports programs were cut. Energy costs were almost double. We currently pay $5.50 per gallon for oil compared to $2.80 a gallon in February 2021. The higher fuel costs added hefty surcharges to our electricity and shipping costs. K continues to apply for grants, which supplements instructional support. Still, even with federal grants, we may be forced to make complex changes if funding levels remain stagnant. Student travel and lack of ferry services and increased air travel. Reliable funding is critical to improve student outcomes by stabilizing schools and reducing educator turnover. With an increase of the BSA, our district will use additional funds for a permanent preschool teacher, a reading specialist, a librarian, deferred maintenance, transportation, and more.
If you could please wrap up your comments.
Yes, please consider increasing and inflation-proofing their BSA to ensure Alaska schools can continue to serve students with the quality education they deserve, especially for small K-12 schools with bare-bones staffing and programs and extreme operating challenges. Thank you for your service and support of our students.
Thank you so much for your testimony today. Next up in Fairbanks is Phyllis Morrow, followed by Danielle Logan. Phyllis, if you're available, please state your name, affiliation, and you can begin your 2-minute testimony. Welcome to Senate Finance.
Thank you. I want to thank you for your work. My name is Phyllis Morrow. I'm a retired educator. I was a materials developer for the Lower Kuskokwim School District and then a UAF professor and administrator. So I appreciate both the complexities of prioritizing funding and the on-the-ground effects of funding decisions for students and teachers and other staff. My own children began their schooling in Bethel. They continued through high school in Fairbanks, and my grandchildren attend public school there. My son teaches a combined kindergarten and first grade class here. So over the decades, I have seen the effects of the decline in the base student allocation. My son and his colleagues are extraordinarily dedicated teachers, and I see them face annual uncertainties around funding. They are now teaching children with needs that are seriously compounded by entering school from pandemic conditions. We've heard a bit about that from other people testifying. As funding declines, we're seeing programs shrink or disappear. And with annual funding uncertainties becoming worse, whether they're longtime or newer teachers, staff often don't even know at which school or at what level they'll be teaching until the last minute. Starting the school year a day late and a dollar short makes it impossible for even the most talented and passionately committed teachers to meet the needs of students. These teachers are beginning to leave. This puts increasing pressure on those who remain. And those who remain are contemplating for the first time leaving the profession. As I think the preceding testimony has shown, this dam is cracked and leaking. And when public education breaks, students drown. Please pass SB 52. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Murrow. We appreciate you taking the time to call in. Next in Fairbanks is Daniel Logan, the president of the Education Support Staff Association, followed by Jessica LaWerse. Ms. Logan, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you, members of the Senate Finance Committee, for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Danielle Logan, and I am a 7-year educator in the Fairbanks North Borough School District, and I am in favor of SB 52. I was born and raised in Fairbanks and love our community. But over these past 7 years, I've seen our district change, and much of that can be tracked back to the fiscal struggles. Over the past 3 years, our support staff has had more turnover than ever before. Many vacant positions like tutors, sped aides, and classroom aides are there to help students learn, but many of these are currently proposed to be on the Fairbanks district, are proposed to be cut by the Fairbanks district. Our custodial staff is shorthanded, and oftentimes schools are running without a custodian. This results in less student learning and in less ready-to-learn spaces, with untrained staff doing jobs they're not hired to do. In Fairbanks, we see more educators, not just teachers, that are leaving the profession. When there is not enough staff, students suffer. As support staff are essential to running a school, we help teachers with one-on-one tutoring so they can work with the rest of the class. We help manage overcrowded classes as aides from kindergarten through high school. We are the lowest paid employees and are often the first budget cuts in the district. But we are essential to a well-run school and student learning. Over 80% of Fairbanks support staff work a second job just to make ends meet. And with rapid turnover, because of how hard these jobs can be, it's a hard job that is constantly on the chopping block and leaves our children suffering. Without a permanent increase to the BSA, our schools will continue down the desperate path of decline. Please make a permanent and significant investment in the BSA for our students, schools, and communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Logan. We appreciate you calling in. Next in Anchorage is Jessica LaWerse, followed by Joshua Gerard. Jessica, please state your name, affiliation, begin your 2-minute testimony. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jessica Lowers. I'm a parent of 2 students at Klatt Elementary in the Anchorage School District and resident in a low-income neighborhood, neighbor to about 150 other elementary students attending Klatt. I'm calling in to support SB 52 on behalf of my children and their peers. Klatt is one of 33 Title I schools in our district with 368 students. 73% are economically disadvantaged. 81% are minority students. About 30 are special education students, and we're a top 5 school for highest number of English language learners. This is but a small snapshot of the district's high Title I minority special ed and ELL population. Why do I share these numbers? Flat funding public education and an inadequate BSA has the most impact on the economically disadvantaged, on English language learners, and on minority or special education students. These students' parents or guardians are also those who you are least likely to hear from, not because they don't support an increase in public education funds, but because of access barriers such as working multiple jobs, lack of child care or transportation, language, culture barriers, reliable access to phone or internet, and navigating the system to testify. Instead of asking who is advocating for more education funding, ask yourself who isn't, and more importantly, why. These students are going to feel the most drastic effects of poorly funded education, which leads to educational disparities and inequality for these populations of students, which leads to poor academic and achievement levels. National economic reports show strong correlation between educational achievement and income, meaning lower quality education can lead to lower income later in life. Poverty level, minority or racial status, and language are proven to contribute to educational disparities and low academic involvement and achievement. This is the education disparity cycle. There are successful interventions to reduce this continuation of the cycle, but these interventions require a robustly funded education system to help students out of the cycle. Bottom line, it requires the prioritization of funding public education. Again, I urge you to support SB 52, play a part in breaking the educational disparity cycle, invest in the gold mine of students in our state whose voices are not amplified in this room, and ensure their health and wellness and the health and future of our state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jessica. We appreciate your testimony today. Next in Fairbanks with Seward Middle School is Joshua Gerard, followed by Debbie Carey. Joshua, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Joshua Gerard. I am a professional at Seward Middle School. I've worked for KPBSD for about 5 years now. I started out as a long-term sub in an intensive needs classroom at Sterling Elementary. After a few months of learning and not running in fear, I interviewed and was selected to join the team of wonderful paras and staff. It wasn't long before the world was hit hard by COVID. Suddenly, teachers and education support professionals were lifted out of schools and had to move curriculum online and teach in a new environment. We responded to this great need, and we were raised to the status of heroes. Even though the world was going through terrible times, I felt like I truly mattered, and the work I was doing mattered. Soon enough, we were back in school, so things slowly went back to normal, or so we thought. It wasn't long before we felt like we were the villains in the same story. After 2 years of dealing with the virus and distance learning, the lack of funding reared its ugly head. We started to lose the arts, then teaching positions, and soon staff had to take up even more duties. There was no compensation, and we would often hear how we weren't doing enough. Community leaders blamed the teachers, not only in our wonderful state, but across the nation. The stress of work and the lack of competitive pay drove ever more of our great educators to seek greener fields, taking their knowledge of the job with them. We've continued to do the best with what we have. The ones truly suffering from this are our students. Our students are Alaska's greatest resource. They will be Alaska's next educators, next legislators, and our future. What we are currently showing them is that Alaska doesn't seem to care about their education. The lack of funding for our public schools and their meager interest in our educators has become ever more apparent. Our students see it. They are much more aware than so many give them credit for. We are tasked with raising them to their highest potential, but how are educators supposed to do that with a skeleton crew and no funding? In our school, we will be down to 6 teachers next year. One we'll have to share with the high school. We will have no arts. We may not even be able to do electives. I am the only paraprofessional and will be expected to work with my intensive needs students, as well as our resource.
If you could please wrap up.
Yes, I will have to manage the curriculum of all of our students in each of our classes, where I'm expected to make sure they complete their assignments while managing their needs. You cannot hire more because the cost of living is so high.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Gerard. We appreciate you calling in today. Next, from the Kenai Peninsula School District is Debbie Carey, followed by Cindy Micah. Ms. Carey, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you, members of the Senate Finance Committee. For the record, my name is Debbie Carey, and I'm president for the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District. I am here today to speak in support of Senate Bill 52, increasing the BSA. From the research I've done, the foundation formula and the base student allocation was put into law in 1998. At that time, the BSA was $3,940. When you adjust that for inflation, it would be equivalent to $7,152 today. Senate Bill 52 would get the state closer to the original intent of the bill. There were years when the BSA was higher than the adjustment for inflation figures, and there were years when education was funded in addition to the BSA with one-time funds outside the formula. While one-time funding does help with the immediate needs of the district, it also creates an immediate crisis in the retention of great staff members because of the uncertainty they face in rehiring and the hiring process. KPBSD was able to keep many of our highly qualified staff using ESSER funds. KPBSD was very transparent with the use of the ESSER funds. Unfortunately, we are looking at a $13.1 million deficit for the next fiscal year. Without an increase, KPBSD is looking at cutting 34 positions. Supporting Senate Bill 52 will not only allow districts to reduce their deficit, but will also allow districts to fulfill their goals and strategic plans. Our board has identified 3 goals for the next year, which directly align with our strategic plan. Cultivate student success with an emphasis on literacy, career, and technical education and citizenship. Goal 1. Goal 2. Strengthen relationships by fostering active engagement and involvement with families and communities. Goal 3, support and build partnerships with businesses and communities while increasing collaboration on facility use. 25 years ago, we didn't think about things like social emotional development, social media, trauma-informed schools, or cyberbullying. But today it is imperative that we not only think about it, but we allocate resources to support the well-being of students and combat the negative stigma surrounding mental health and focus on mental wellness for all students, staff, and communities.
Thank you. Please wrap up.
Provide an excellent education in all areas. We are not asking you to fund a failing system. We are asking you to embrace the future of education and support our children so they may be afforded with opportunities in this ever-changing world. Please support Senate Bill 52. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Ms. Carey. We appreciate you calling in today. Next in Kodiak, we have Cindy Micah, followed by Patricia Gibbs. Ms. Micah, if you're available, please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman Olson, co-chairs, and members of the committee. Thank you for your service and for allowing me to testify today. My name is Cindy Micah, and I am the superintendent for the Kodiak Island Borough School District. Today I am speaking in favor of SB 52 and the full $1,000 increase to the BSA. The BSA has been flat funded for years, which really is a misnomer as we are experiencing the worst inflation in 40 years. So in actuality, we are being funded less than previous years. For example, in 1 year, our transportation costs have gone up $357,000, and our transportation revenue has gone down $7,500. This is a 19% increase that we are funding from fund balance. Our property and liability insurance has gone from $308,000 to $624,000 over 5 years. This is more than double. Our workman comp costs have also increased 15% over 2 years. Inflation-proofing education funding and increasing the BSA is necessary to ensure districts can provide a high-quality education and allow us to recruit and retain high-quality educators. After years of conservative budgeting in the Kodiak School District and utilizing K.I.S.S and ESSER funds, KIBSD is now facing a $4.4 million deficit, twice as large as last year's deficit. Our hold harmless expires this year, and there is no more fat to trim. So the steps we are currently taking include reducing staffing that directly touches students, our teachers and aides. We have currently cut 10 positions for next year and are looking for another 5 positions. This is leading to increased class sizes at the secondary level, but it's a necessity we are facing to decrease our projected $4.4 million deficit. We have recently completed negotiations with our teacher association and both classified associations, and have written into the newly ratified collective bargaining agreements that approximately 49% of any new revenues from the BSA will go to salaries across all associations. We are committed to stabilizing our workforce with about half of any new revenues from the BSA. We know that stabilizing our workforce and being able to recruit and retain high-quality educators is going to have a direct impact on student success.
Thank you. Please wrap up.
While we are appreciative of funds allocated outside of the BSA, for us to have sustainable funding that we can count on and forward plan, we need the funds allocated within the BSA. That's why I'm in favor of the full $1,000 increase in SB 52. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Cindy. We appreciate you calling in today. Next, also from Kodiak, is Patricia Gibbs, followed by Marcelo Quinto. Ms. Gibbs, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Patricia Gibbs. I'm calling from Kodiak, and I'm calling on behalf of myself and my family. I greatly appreciate the efforts thus far of the Senate Finance Committee in introducing Senate Bill 52, and I'm encouraged to think that we are finally going to perhaps pay the attention that we have not paid to our students, staff, and families for over the past decade. Without limited attention to the base student allocation, I feel like we've reached a crisis level. We are critically behind where we should be, having only increased the base student allocation by less than 5% in over a decade, while our inflation or cost of living has increased 5 times that in our state. We just heard from Superintendent Micah, who shared with you the dismal situation here in Kodiak. We haven't been able to find, let alone retain, qualified staff here in Kodiak as well as the rest of the state. And currently there are over 1,000 positions open throughout our state. Educating our youth should be our top priority because they are our future.
Great, thank you very much. We appreciate you calling in, Patricia. Next up in Juneau, we have Marcella Quinto, followed by Jason Terrarian. Marcelo, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Marcelo Quinto. I am the past president of the Alaskan Native Brotherhood Grand Camp and also the vice president of Camp 70, local A and B. We are an organization that's been around since 1912, and education has been the main factor of that thing. We knew that years ago, in order for us to grow as a group of people and assist ourselves with education, and that has been the major focus of the Alaska Native Brotherhood ever since, for the past over 110 years. We are in, I am also a student. I was born and raised here in Juneau and educated here in our system. And I can tell you that during my years at school, the class sizes were not as large, and the education of Juneau was one of the highest in the state of Alaska. We know that class size and teacher ratio is very important, and therefore we are really in support of the SB 52, and I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quinto. We appreciate you calling in today. Next from Nikiski is Jason Terrarian, and followed by Christine Villano. Jason, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
This is Jason Taurianen, and I am a member of the KPBSD School Board. Also, I'm a homestead member of a homestead family and live on homestead lands here in Nikiski. And I just want to speak in strong support of this bill as it's written. I think it's really well crafted legislation that is going to help fix a lot of problems if it's passed. And so I want to give you some reasons why that are a little bit different, hopefully, than what you've heard already. I ran for school board because I didn't agree with one of the programs that we had purchased for education. I was an educator at the time, working as an aide in the building, and I sort of stepped out of that and went a different career path and ran for school board because I wanted to be a part of that discussion. When I got there, I realized that the budget is very lean, and that every cut that we have to make goes into people, and there's not a lot of room. And I know a lot of people believe there's a lot of fat. There's not. And so as a conservative, that was a surprise to me, but I've done what I can as a board member to do what I can to help clean the budget up and use taxpayer money efficiently. At this time, inflation is continuing to cause devastating effects to our budget, and we need to fix that. And I believe this bill will. Lon Garrison was asked a question earlier, and basically was asked to choose between education and the PFD, in not so many words. And I would say that that's not really a question, because adequately funding education is a constitutional requirement that the legislature and the governor is required to do. And right now that's not happening, and that needs to be fixed. The PFD is a whole other argument, a whole other discussion, but our former lawmakers that established the permanent fund, not the dividend, the permanent fund, did it to protect Alaska from the future when oil revenues went down. The permanent fund dividend was established when times were good, when oil revenue was flowing and we had extra money and the investment started to explode, not at the initial onset when the fund was established.
Thank you. Please wrap up.
What it's for, and adequately fund public education as you're constitutionally mandated to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. We appreciate your time. Next up, we have Christine Villano from Fairbanks, and then we will move to Julie Smith here in the room, followed by Will Chernovac. Christine, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you so much, Senate Finance Committee, for allowing our state to respond to Senate Bill 52. My name is Christine Villano. I'm a lifelong Alaskan. My affiliation is I'm 71 years old, and I'm a lover of children, all the children of the state of Alaska. I'm calling from Fairbanks. I've also lived in St. Mary's, Alaska. I was a teacher, a parent, volunteer, and head of the PTA, and also a volunteer in the schools now as a retired person. And it seems like we're talking about something that I've fought for the past 35 years. Forward funding of education, and now the SBA. We do need an early and stable and reliable fund to improve outcomes. I heard somebody from Anchorage School District talk about we have to change adult behaviors to improve outcomes, and I totally believe this is the chance for us adults to change the outcomes. We need to stabilize schools by reducing and reduce staff turnovers. I am the mother of 3 kids and the grandmother of 2, and I have been involved in their education in every single way. And I volunteer in my grandchildren's classes, and I see a gigantic difference from when I was in my own children's classes, because we don't fund education like we used to. Fairbanks North Star Borough used to be a pinnacle of great education. The teachers were happy. The morale now is horrible. And the kids are in overcrowded classrooms. They don't have, my grandchildren don't have instrumental music. They don't have art teachers. The nurses are cut. We had 3 elementary schools closed down last year.
Thank you.
Language
please wrap up.
I believe that we should support SB 52 for all of our children. It's a moral and a constitutional imperative. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Villano. We appreciate your time and passion. We are going to go into the room now. Julie Smith. Welcome, Ms. Smith. If you could state your name, affiliation, begin your 2-minute testimony, and then we will move back off net in Kenai with Will Chernovac. Ms. Smith, welcome.
Hello. My name is Julie Smith, and I have flown in from Fairbanks. I am here to support SB 52, and the reason why is because, thank you. The reason why is because a well-funded school means a well-adjusted community. Students who have many opportunities in schools are able to not only see what kind of work they would like to do as they grow up, whether they start their own small business, go to work for one of the corporations, or become a doctor, a teacher, or anything else that a community needs, but it also teaches them how to live a well-rounded life, how to use things like art and music and stuff like that to help them deal with the stress of work, so that way they don't get burnt out. And I believe that many of the students are struggling right now because in the Fairbanks area, we did have 2 or 3 of the schools close. Many of the classrooms are larger. Many of the parents of students who have special needs had struggled when trying to prepare their kids to moving to another school and getting used to new students and new teachers. And many of the teachers who I know who work in the district are considering whether or not this is something they want to keep doing, because while they love their job and they love the kids, they're given more and more responsibilities, but none of the pay that goes with that. Meanwhile, the students also do not see any of the funding as they lose more and more programs. So please support this bill and support Alaska's future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. We appreciate you being here. We're going to take a brief at ease.
Hello, my fellow Alaskans. I hope you guys have all been paying close attention to the testimony being given here today. I am currently on hold myself, waiting impatiently to be able to give testimony. I find it really disgusting that the majority of the Senate committee was not there for nearly the entire time that they have been giving testimony, and are just now beginning to show back up into the room with claims they were in a special committee, but were already that they were listening in while they were in another special meeting. Now, they cleared the room in Juneau there almost an hour ago of people giving testimony, and said that they were going to go to everybody else now. Oh, they're back.
Public testimony, and want to thank Senator Merrick for stepping in while we had to go out and do some other state business. Our next person up is going to be Will Chervenak, and after her is going to be Mary Olson. Mr. Chervenak, please go ahead with your testimony. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you to the chair, and thank you to the committee for hearing my testimony today in support of SB 52. For the record, my name is Will Chervenak. I am a high school administrator in the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District. As I have watched this year's legislative session unfold, it has come to my attention that a lot of misinformation has been spread when it comes to education funding. For instance, I have heard presentations and testimony that 50% of expenditures have gone to school and district administration. As can be seen in the KBBSD 2023 expense report, the largest expenditure category is classroom instruction at nearly 61%. School and district administration took up 5.5% of expenditures. Another false narrative out there is that Alaska currently spends the most on education as compared to any other state. This is untrue due to the fact that once you factor in the high cost of living in Alaska, we actually rank below the national average on per pupil spending. The reality is that when expenses and inflation go up every year, flat funding education is a cut. For instance, healthcare in Alaska is 5 times the national average and has increased almost 7% annually over the last 5 years. Transportation costs have also increased significantly, yet there has been no change in per student allocation since 2016. Workman's comp has increased over 31% over the past 5 years. Utilities for school buildings have increased by almost 6% in the last fiscal year. Property and liability insurance has increased over 23% in the last 5 years and is projected for an additional increase of 15 to 20% in the upcoming fiscal year. The combination of years of flat funding, despite increasing costs and inflation, the consistent narrative that Alaska schools simply need to do more with less, ever-increasing class sizes, and the lack of competitive salaries in retirement have caused our hiring pools to become anemic. For these reasons, the Alaska legislature needs to pass Senate Bill 52, support our schools, invest in our students, invest in Alaska's future workforce, and ensure that there will be adequate education funding for the future. Thank you for hearing my testimony today and for your support of Senate Bill 52.
Mr. Chervenak, thank you very much for coming out this afternoon. Next we have Mary Olson, and after that is going to be Anna Boson. Ms. Olson, please go ahead with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Senate Financial Committee. My name is Mary Olson. I live in the Palmer area, and I've worked in Alaskan school systems since 1978 as an employee in Anchorage and Matsu until 2004, and as a contracted specialist in rural districts until now. Because of my related service position, I've had the opportunity of being like a fly in the wall in the classroom. I've observed many great educators engaging students in learning. This is not something every person is capable of doing, as many parents learned during the at-home learning with COVID. All three of my children spent their educational careers at Mat-Su, with my youngest graduating in 2004. They received a great education that allowed them to become the productive and well-rounded adults they are. And you know the statistics, years of flat funding and inflation that have eroded the purchase power of even that amount. To have a quality education, it is not a good strategy to have larger class sizes and classroom positions filled with people who are not qualified educators. I have observed this decrease of funding, along with current pension plan problems, to lead to districts cutting teaching positions and positions not being filled or being filled with paraprofessionals or aides. I heard from a teacher in Mat-Su with such a large class size that the desks were difficult to fit into the classroom. I recently spoke to a rural high school, a rural school's HR manager who described the difficulty recruiting and keeping staff. I asked that the base student allocation be increased, an amount that will compensate for the years of erosion with flat funding. It then needs to be inflation-proof for the coming years. I am very thankful that my children graduated in 2004. They came from a great system. They all remain in Alaska, serving the community as a teacher, a manager of a well-known Alaskan private company, and as an employee of the Alaska court system. During their education, I heard from people moving into the state who expressed an appreciation for what our education system provided compared to the state they came from. I'm concerned that those comments are now being reversed. I hope you will consider the funding that will make Alaska return to having a great educational system that we're proud of. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your testimony this afternoon, Ms. Olson. Next is Anna Boson. After that is going to be Kirsten Shupp. Ms. Boson, please go ahead with your testimony.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Anna Boson, and I'm a resident in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm in strong support of Senate Bill 52. I am testifying as a mom of a kindergartner at a neighborhood school and as an Alaskan who is a professional engineer that wants to stay in Alaska. This is an important measure that we all should get behind because this has the power to transform the lives of countless children and families in our state while strengthening the Alaskan economy. As we all know, education is the key to a better future, and that includes those who do not even have children in public schools. Strong education systems are the foundation to a healthy economy by providing quality education and social structure for working families to set roots and invest in a community. But unfortunately, public schools in Alaska have been struggling for a long time due to insufficient funding and inflation, and we are seeing out-migration from the state, particularly working-age Alaskans who don't see a future for themselves and their potential family. Flat funding and inflation have resulted in a number of measurable consequences, including overcrowded classrooms, lack of teachers and employees, and dilapidated buildings. As a parent of a new school kindergartner, I am now aware how much schools are leaning on parents to carry the torch for school supplies, extracurriculars, PTA fundraisers, school field trips, and lunches if their school doesn't have even enough cafeteria staff. That may be fine for wealthy families, but we know that that is the rarity, and it shouldn't be the expectation for all families to be able to provide basics for their neighborhood school to have enough to be able to teach in a fun and caring way. This is why SB 52 is so important. If passed, this bill would increase the base student allocation for Alaskan public schools, which would in turn provide more funding for our schools to hire additional teachers and staff, plan long-term actions like reading and math initiatives, and upgrade and replace substandard facilities. The dollars invested through BSA circulate throughout AK by resident teachers and staff living in their communities and making roots. This would make a significant difference in the lives of our children, Alaskan small businesses, and communities. Moreover, investing in our public schools helps to create a more skilled and knowledgeable workforce and tells current Alaskans there's a good schools here to stay and raise your family. This will attract more business to our state and to help grow our economy in the long term. Please support Senate Bill 52. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Boson. Next up is Kirsten Shupp. After Kirsten Shupp is going to be Brian Smith. Ms. Shupp, please go ahead, step up to the plate, identify yourself for the testimony, your testimony, and go ahead.
Hi, Hi, this is Kristen Shoup. I live in Fairbanks, and I strongly support SB 52. And I'm just pulled over because I was on the way to pick up kids from school. It sounds cliche, but the kids are our future, and we need to invest in them. They will be our nurses, engineers, sanitation workers, and politicians. We need them to be successful so that our communities can thrive and where these kids will want to raise their own children, and so that we can attract new families to help build a strong state. This means investing in education and respecting the hard work of teachers and support staff to help provide the best possible education for all students to learn and receive a high-quality education. I know some folks say they don't want to throw good money after bad, but we are not going to get better outcomes with less resources. We must support strong educational success. And poor education outcomes does not just lie on educators. It is also the responsibility of parents. Parents need to be supported to actively be involved in educating their children from birth with strong early reading and pre-K education. Put books in kids' hands, not screens. And while big PFDs are nice on an individual level, the benefits of high-quality education are much greater in contributing to long-term economic strength in our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much for testifying this afternoon, Ms. Shoup. Next up is Brian Smith. He will be followed by Joshua Gill. Mr. Smith, please.
Hello, my name is Brian Smith, and I'm a parent in the Petersburg School District. My kids are aged 5 and 3, and so I'm very invested in the long-term sustainability of quality education in our town and in our state. I'm calling in support of SB 52. I want our schools to be able to attract and retain high-quality educators and also be able to pay the bills for building maintenance and fuel in an extremely high inflation situation. I've observed the trajectory of teacher pay in Alaska and compared it to that in nearby states that we compete against for the best educators. Alaska has not been on the right trajectory to remain competitive. Locally, we are concerned about whether we will be able to attract a qualified high school math teacher for the coming school year. We need SB 52 as well as future efforts for school funding to keep up with inflation and not fall behind the pack. Our kids and their future deserve the best education we can provide, which is more important than a PFD. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, thank you very much for coming out this afternoon. Next up is going to be Joshua Gill. After that, we'll be followed by Rebecca Bernard. Mr. Gill.
Good afternoon, Chairman Olson, co-chairs, and committee members. My name is Joshua Gill. I'm the president of the Alaska Association of Elementary School Principals and the principal at Iapun Lake Navik in Bethel, which is part of the Lower Custom School District. I'm asking you to support a substantial increase in the BSA. Alaska schools desperately need additional funding to catch up with all the inflation costs, implement the READS Act with fidelity, maintain our facilities, and increase educators' salaries so our students can have high-quality educators they deserve. In LKSD, we are the largest REA with 29 schools that are only accessible to Anchorage by air or barge. As a district, we rely heavily on air transportation to connect students for activities, to connect our itinerant staff, such as social workers and counselors, with students, and to connect our teachers and principals with professional development and with one another. We have a lot to be proud of in LKSD. We have an excellent immersion program and dual language programs that rely heavily on local grown talent. We have a wonderful curriculum material that are place-based and culturally relevant that are provided both in English and Yukdun. We have outstanding students who deserve an excellent education every day. We need substantial increase in the BSA to cover our fundamental needs. At a minimum, we are faced with increased fuel and utility costs, increased travel costs, increased supply costs, as well as insurance and construction. We are struggling to recruit teachers, provide adequate teacher housing, and keep our facilities in working order. Rural districts are used to having to work extra hard to fill vacancies. However, educator recruitment has become increasingly difficult in recent years. The cost of filling each vacancy continues to rise, if we can fill them at all. In the past, teachers and administrators used to be attracted to, in part, to the higher salaries, but with flat funding, our salaries have not kept up with the rest of the United States. Despite rigorous recruitment, rural schools began each school year with numerous vacant positions. These position vacancies have a direct impact on student learning. Since the last increase in the BSA, LKSD has had huge increase in costs. Here are some examples. A 46% increase in fuel costs, a 38% increase in utility costs, a 40% increase in travel costs, and supplies costs increase between 10 and 20%, and an insurance rate increase of 26%. We are not asking for more money in order to do more. We're simply advocating for an increase inside the BSA to allow us to give our students the best possible education, have it done in a safe building with a high-quality education and reasonable class size. As it is now, we are doing less with less, and our Alaska students deserve better. Thank you for your time, and please support a substantial increase inside the BSA. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Gill. Next is Rebecca Bernard, and after that will be Christy Wood.
Hello. My name is Rebecca Bernard. I'm in Anchorage, and I am a mom to 2 students in the Anchorage public schools, one in high school, one in middle school. And I'm calling today to support SB 52 very strongly. Like all parents, I love my children dearly, and I want them to thrive and to grow up to share their gifts with their community. Their school experiences so far have been mostly positive. They've had great teachers, and I've loved witnessing their minds and hearts opening and growing as they learn about the world they are part of and begin figuring out what their strengths are. So far, math, art, music. The education they're getting in our public schools is so important to their futures as contributing adults. I've heard it said that if you want to know what a person values, just look at how they spend their money. Alaska has been flat funding our schools for several years now, with the predictable result that programs have been cut, teachers are leaving, and schools have been closed, as so much of the testimony today has shown. Just as one example, the Anchorage School District Ignite program was looked at during this past year for possible cuts. This is a program that has sparked a love of learning for so many students over the years, including my daughter. Does the state value giving our children a strong education? Do we value preparing our students to enter the workforce? Do we value helping our youth to find and cultivate their particular strengths so they can share them with the world? If we do, then it's time to put our funds where our values are and raise the base student allocation enough to catch up with the past few years of inflation and rising costs. I urge this committee to put our children first and pass SB 52. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Ms. Bernard, thank you very much for coming out this afternoon. Next is Christy Wood. She's going to be followed by Penny Vladla. Ms. Wood, please.
Hi, my name is Christy Wood, and I'm a longtime Anchorage resident, and I'm in full support of Senate Bill 52. I've heard the argument we shouldn't raise the BSA until test scores come up, but I don't understand how we can expect public schools to perform well when we've been consistently undercutting them for so long. My family is vested in a higher BSA for both personal and economic reasons. My son is a student in ASD, and I own a home in one of the neighborhoods where ASD was considering closing a school last fall. When my son was younger, he attended a private school. However, after a few years, we realized the private school was not meeting his academic or emotional needs. We also racked up $25,000 in credit card debt, and that was even after we used the school's tuition assistance program. It was an incredible relief when we realized ASD had a special program that was able to meet my son where he was at. So we switched to public school and have never regretted the decision. Now for my economic concerns. What will happen to the value of my Nunaka Valley home if the school closes? Right now there's a lot of young couples in the neighborhood. Will they still want to move here if we lose that school? Or will they choose to move to a neighborhood that still has a school? How about Alaska's outmigration? Is Anchorage losing young working-age families because they don't see our community as a good place to raise a family?
Ms. Wood, if you could please wrap up your comments.
We all want Alaska with a strong and robust economy. So in short, please support the BSA because I think that's supporting our economic future for Alaska.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wood. We appreciate you calling in. Next up is Penny Vadla in Soldotna, followed by Kathy Simpler.
Yes, thank you very much. And I appreciate your providing this opportunity in the Senate to speak in favor of the Senate Bill 52. My name is Penny Vadla, and this is my 15th year as a school board member of the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District, and prior to that I taught for 30+ years in the high school and college level. It is imperative that the state provide adequate, sustainable funding for our schools so we can continue to provide the quality educational opportunities and service we currently have and are charged to provide under the Alaska State Constitution. We have had years of stagnant education spending, and our BSA amount has not kept par with inflation. Kenai Peninsula Borough School Districts and other districts are struggling despite making cuts or adjustments to district office, class courses, programs, staff, and so forth. Also, many districts continue to encumber high costs of transportation, healthcare premiums, and more. The KPBSC and other districts do not want to make additional reductions that will potentially increase pupil-teacher ratio across the board or cut very successful programs like career and technical education, student success liaisons, and other vital programs. We need to be able to retain our teachers and recruit new teachers in the future. A solid, predictable education funding will ensure success. My husband and daughter and my son are highly successful K-12 Alaskan graduates and college students as well, and they contribute to our economy and make our community a better place. The last increase was in 2017. Please, in one-time funding is not sustainable. Please support our schools, provide sustainable, predictable funding in order for our districts to maintain quality educational experiences for all children so the children have the necessary skills to be successful, contributing citizens now and in the future. I really appreciate that you have given us this opportunity to give testimony because education has always been my life, and I will always be there when we need our voices. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Badla. We appreciate your time today. Next in Kodiak is Kathy Simpler, followed by Rachel Lord. Ms. Simpler, state your name, affiliation, and please begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Simpler, and I'm from Kodiak. Thank you to the committee for the opportunity to speak today and for your service to our state. I'm calling in today to express my support of SB 52, which proposes an increase to the BSA. An increase to the BSA would allow our school districts to better plan their budgets and add important items back into their programs that have been cut over the last several years. These items include nurses, counselors, music and gym teachers, and other services that directly affect our students. They have been cut in order to pay the increase of fuel and other supply and maintenance costs that have risen due to normal cost inflation, not to mention the COVID inflation bump. The state of Alaska has permanently invested. Now, I might have this number wrong because I heard someone say that it's increased $280 since 2011, and so I might have this number wrong. So it could be 280 or 380 into my own high school senior's education. So over the course of her public school career, she has received either $21 or $29 a year towards her education. When districts receive one-time money, they use it to pay down their debt. It's money they can't rely on and therefore can't use it to maintain the continuity of programs or personnel. One-time money is not sustainable. I would ask you, how do you think the $21 or the $29 a year improved my child's education and that of her peers? I wonder what the investment would have been if the state had just put the one-time money into the BSA over the course of her education career. I'd know we'd have a more stable education workforce and continuity of quality programming if that had been the case. Our children are counting on you. Our children are worth the investment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Simpler. We appreciate your testimony. Next in Homer, Rachel Lord, followed by Bobby Burgess. Ms. Lord, please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Hi, thanks, members of Senate Finance, for taking testimony on SB 52. My name is Rachel Lord. I'm calling from Homer. I'm a parent and a business owner, and I am speaking for myself today. I know the question of increasing the BSA is not in a vacuum. There's lots of fiscal concerns facing Alaska and Alaskans. Having a functional, effective public K-12 system requires funding, consistent and sufficient funding, and not boom and bust funding. Our school district here on the Kenai Peninsula is facing a significant deficit this year, and that deficit pales in comparison to the deficit we're looking at next year when one-time federal funding runs out. Should we pull apart and look again at the BSA funding formula? Sure, it's always good to re-examine assumptions and ask critical questions. And that's going to be a very large task. Our kids cannot wait for the study, recommendations, and actions on those recommendations to happen. Wherever the BSA is at the time, the legislature may make changes to the formula. It will be part of the movement of the ship. We can't keep stretching our schools thinner and thinner. They're no longer doing more with less. They are doing less with less. Every year, as fixed costs go up, and the funding stays uncertain and in decline in the face of inflation. Our private sector grows and thrives on the foundation of a functional, stable public sector. Good schools that we can count on are a basic public service that we need for a strong economy. Working families like ours need schools that we can depend on. Alaska needs a fiscal plan. I believe in a structured POMV that allows for funding basic public services and prioritizes education, restructuring of our existing tax structures, and a broad-based tax that helps tie Alaskans to our services. While I'm speaking for myself today, I'm also on the Homer City Council, and I will note that last month we unanimously passed a resolution supporting a meaningful increase to the base student allocation as an important component for the quality of life in our community. In closing, I strongly support SB 52. Alaskan kiddos and our families need a BSA increase of at least $1,000 that is ideally also tied to inflation. Thank you for your time and work on this and so many important finance questions facing Alaska.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lord. Next in Fairbanks, Bobby Burgess, followed by Kate Quick. Bobby, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Hi, my name is Bobby Burgess. It's a soft G. I'm a resident of Fairbanks, and I'm testifying on my own behalf in support of SB 52. I had the honor and privilege of serving on the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District Budget Advisory Committee this fall as the parent representative. As one of the parent representatives, and what I learned about the budget is alarming. Not only has our district had to close schools recently, but we've been forced into a position of inadequate staff funding, leading to increased pupil-to-teacher ratios and skeleton crews in supporting departments like maintenance and facilities management. Having inadequate support staff ultimately leads to increased costs as services have to be outsourced by a contract or delayed. We have had several temporary school closures in recent years due to maintenance issues and the inability to respond to them quickly. There's also lots of deferred maintenance in our district. I have heard opponents of education funding make the argument that schools shouldn't be given additional funding until they improve outcomes. This is like telling a starving person that they can only have bread and fish if they gain a little weight first. Our schools are not failing, they are starving for funding. If we do not receive a significant increase to the BSA like this bill provides, we will be forced to consider cutting more programs like career technical education, more staff, resulting in scenarios like a loss of kindergarten aides and even higher pupil-to-teacher ratios, and we may even need to consider closing more schools. SB 52 provides enough funding that our district could be secure in their current operating budget for not only the next fiscal year, but beyond. Adequate funding for schools can help our district plan for the future instead of scrambling during budget season each year to figure out how to pinch pennies and which programs can suffer additional cuts. I'll say there's not much left to cut if we want to provide even a basic education to our kids. Good schools lead to prosperous communities. Funding our schools will help to ensure that students are prepared to start careers or college upon graduation, helping to provide a workforce for small businesses, and good stewards of our community who will want to stick around and start a family in their home state.
Please wrap up.
Proposed for school funding, SB 52 is the only bill that funds schools adequately now and helps to plan for the future. I appreciate the sponsors of this bill bringing it forward, and I urge you all to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time and calling in. Next from Fairbanks, Kate Quick, followed by Susan Nedzva. Ms. Quick, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Hi, thanks for taking my testimony. I'm Kate Quick. I'm testifying just as myself. I'm a parent of 3 kids, 22 years here in Fairbanks, and I support SB 52. I have 3 teenagers. They're 19, 17, and 14. My oldest graduated last spring and is a freshman at UAF. In the 14 years since my kids entered public school, I've watched our district's offerings decline year after year in terms of classes and support services. For example, my 17-year-old needed a tutor for reading when she was in 2nd and 3rd grade. That tutor is the reason that she was able to learn to read. It was provided by the school but was cut. The services were cut early in her third grade year during the first or earlier rounds of budget cuts. Those tutors haven't been rehired. Now, a friend of mine with a current second grader needed the same tutoring to help her daughter learn to read, and she's having to hire a private tutor at hundreds of dollars per month because the school doesn't provide it, and most families cannot afford that, which means that those kids are going to continue to struggle. So the Alaska Reads Act can't really happen if you don't have the support staff to help our kids who are struggling. Teachers can't do it all alone. As another example, my 14-year-old, he will be a freshman next year. He's not a big fan of school. It's been a struggle, but he's excited for high school, mostly because of the electives. Yesterday we had a meeting with his counselor, or with the high school counselor, and we learned that the high school is cutting their culinary arts classes and possibly other electives because they don't have enough teachers on staff to teach those classes, and as you've heard, nobody's applying for the vacant jobs. They don't know what electives they'll be able to offer next year, and those electives and the external activities in the school are what's going to help him get through high school and graduate.
Thank you, Ms. Quick. If you could wrap up your comments.
Yep. If we care about our kids and you want them to learn to read and you want them to graduate and lead successful lives in Alaska, please pass SB 52. Our state depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Quick. And as the mother of 3 teenagers as well, I wish you the best. Next up in Unalakleet is Susan Nedzva, the Chief School Administrator of the Bering Strait School District, followed by Terry Gottstein. Ms. Nedzva, go ahead with your 2-minute testimony. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. For the record, my name is Susan Nedzva, and I'm the Chief School Administrator for Bering Strait School District. In our district, we have 15 schools and 15 separate sites covering 50,000 square miles and must fly in and out of each village. Needless to say, this offers opportunities and challenges. Predictable funding inside the BSA at a level that meets the needs of our students is essential to operate at full capacity. As you're aware, providing for schools is a constitutional responsibility. However, I wanted to point out some facts to help you understand how critical an increase is at this time. Our costs per item for food, heat, parts, maintenance items, building materials, classroom supplies, computers, internet services, activities, and more have steadily increased, especially in recent years. For us in rural Alaska, this is compounded by shipping and travel cost increases that have doubled or even quadrupled over time. When we can't meet those costs, we must go without, and that impacts everything we do, most of all our students. We're doing our very best to give our students a high-quality education, including workforce skills in a variety of areas and college and career opportunities, including exploration options. In addition, we are working to meet growing social, emotional, and special education needs, as well as complete mandated service expectations such as the AK-READS Act without any additional funding. Rural schools are the hub of many services, including stable access to food, counselor support, and more. When we can meet these needs and provide the full support our students need through stable funding, we will see improved achievement on test scores and all other measures of success. From another angle, one example of how this is impacting us came up this month. We have outgrown our schools in some communities in trying to add portable classrooms to make room for enough students. We are also in desperate need of habitable teacher housing to recruit and retain the high-quality staff our students deserve every day.
Thank you, Ms. Nedzva. If you could please wrap up your comments.
Sure. Some of these costs have increased for, such as a portable classroom, from $388,000 to $600,000. These increases are not sustainable, and we will have to make cuts that will hurt our students. There's a lot of talk about teacher bonuses and funding outside the BSA, and that's certainly appreciated, but we really need the inside the BSA to make sustainable changes that will impact our students in a positive way.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Nedzva. We appreciate you calling in today. Next from Anchorage is Terry Gottstein, followed by Nora Mattel. Ms. Gottstein, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you. My name is Terry Gottstein, and I'm speaking on my own behalf as a citizen of Alaska who has followed education funding issues by necessity for quite some time. Education in Alaska is not supposed to be an afterthought. It is a constitutional responsibility. In addition to others have said that, but it doesn't seem to be sinking in over the long term. In addition, the very nature of education and its impacts also necessitate a long view. Unfortunately, that's not what has been happening. You've heard details from dedicated professionals in the field about how we're behind, we have fallen way behind the power curve in terms of our purchasing power due to neglect of adequate funding over the years. And I strongly support the meaningful raise in the BSA and inflation proofing because anything else is a Band-Aid that has the legislature playing out like a scene from Groundhog Day every year, coming back, to these same hearings and these same issues that just have been creating instability. It's time to get past that. I am the parent of two now adult children who were the product of the Anchorage School District when there was adequate funding, and they benefited from that. And I would like to see future students also benefit from that. My perspective now is that I have a small business doing consulting, college admissions mentoring privately for students. And I've seen how I talk with students and I see the differences. I work with students outside Alaska as well as inside. And I see the differences in what's available to students in the state, the decline in the offerings.
Ms. Gottstein, if you could please wrap up your comments.
Okay, I will. Thank you. Foreign language, things that are not fluff. These are not incidentals. They help. Our students are competing nationally for admissions to colleges, and I've seen how they are now being hamstrung by the lack of offerings. Please support SB 52 and raise the BSA and inflation proof it and be done with it so you don't have to go through this again next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gottstein. We appreciate you taking the time to call in. Next in Anchorage is Nora Mattel, followed by David Boyle. Ms. Mattel, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Hi, my name is Nora Mattel. I'm calling from Anchorage House District 25. I'm a high school teacher in the Anchorage School District, and I also have 2 young boys who will eventually attend public schools in ASD. I'm calling in support of SB 52. I'm deeply concerned the BSA has only increased $30 since 2016, and the cumulative inflation rate during that time has been 25%, so it's basically a 25% decrease in funding. And we can nitpick about the specific budgetary decisions of districts, but this amount is too large of an amount to not affect kids. Over the past 4 years, the shortfall has mostly been filled with federal emergency funding, but next year we're in trouble. In ASD, salaries and benefits make up 80% of expenditures, so there's really not a way to substantially decrease the cost without reducing teachers and support staff, which has big impacts in the classroom. So ranges from class size increases to fewer aides, support special needs students, and fewer security staff to keep the halls conflict-free. As a teacher, the impact of the large class size is simple. So in an hour class, 20 students would theoretically be 3 minutes per student. 30 students is 2 minutes per student, but really it's less than that because we need to give instructions, administrative tasks, etc. And to really teach students, I have to have conversations and I have to give feedback with individuals or small groups. And I find it's really important for English language learners, students with individualized education plans, or students who have reading and math skills significantly below grade level. I mean everyone, but especially those kids. Large classes also much more likely to have critical mass of students with behavioral struggles. It means that I have to spend a greater percentage of my time on classroom management, which means that I can't spend that time with individual students. And also, it increases the amount of time that I have to use to provide feedback on assignments, which means I have less time to spend designing quality lessons. And also, I'm up till 11 p.m. grading papers and then tired the next day and not at my best in the classroom. Class size really has a huge impact on the quality of education I can provide. So the more vulnerable the students, the bigger the negative effect is that. So please consider support increasing and inflation-proofing the BSA.
Thank you, Ms. Mattel. We appreciate you calling in and sharing your thoughts. Next in Anchorage is David Boyle, followed by Zane Barber. Mr. Boyle, welcome to Senate Finance. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you. Senator Merrick, committee members, I'm David Boyle, and I'm speaking for myself. Today, I appear to be in the minority because I'm not a member of the education industry, as most are. I oppose increasing the BSA by $1,000 because there's no accountability for how money is spent in Alaska schools. Most of the state money is fungible. It can be spent anywhere the districts desire, even to pay hefty bonuses to administrators. By the way, according to the last audited ACFR, the per student spending in Anchorage was $19,150 for the last school year. That would seem to me more than enough to educate our children. Where's that money going? According to the ASD budget office, the Anchorage budget is $110,000 for a teacher. There is a need to reform the funding formula to ensure the monies go to the legislators' desired targets. Before you increase the BSA, I believe you should reform the funding formula. Here's why. The student count is only for 3 weeks in October. It should be a daily count as is done in California. The special needs factor needs to be amended. It includes vocational tech ed, which is also included as a separate factor, in effect, double dipping. The special needs factor also includes English language learners, which incentivizes districts to inflate their numbers of ELLs. In Anchorage, 58% of the English language learners speak English as their primary language. The special needs factor is not earmarked, so it can be spent anywhere the district wants. The intensive needs factor only counts students on the last day of the 20-day count period. How many of these students stay the entire year? They should all at least be counted quarterly. The worst part, these funds may not even go to the intensive needs students. They're fungible. The hold harmless provision, as you know, rewards the district for losing students. In theory, a district could lose all its students, get 75% of its funding the next year. This factor should be repealed. I noted that some say, quote, we need more money to teach our kids how to read, end quote. Well, what are the districts doing with the funding if they're not teaching our kids how to read now? Here's how the funding cycle works in Alaska. The district negotiates employee contracts. The district then digs a deep budget hole. The district goes to the legislature to backfill the budget hole. The legislature is having to pay for the contracts while not even being at the negotiating table. This is like me getting a second mortgage on my home and telling my neighbors they have to pay for it. There's no cost control, and you, the legislature, have no seat at the bargaining table. As you know, health care is a huge cost to districts. In Anchorage, the district pays more than $21,000 per NEA member, and there's no accountability for the spent funds. It goes to the NEA. The Anchorage district also pays $500 a week for health care for Teamsters. That's $26,000 on an annualized basis, and there is no accountability for the spent funds. It goes straight to the
Mr. Boyle, if you want to go ahead and wrap up on your testimony, we've come up to the 2-minute limit. And you're the second to the last one is going to be testifying.
You can ensure the dollars go to the classroom. I oppose increasing the BSA by $1,000. Thank you very much, Senator Olson.
Okay. Calling at ease.
All right, you guys, you've all heard it here live. They're down to the last couple of testifiers. Well, I must be one of them because I'm still on hold waiting for that time to come. Really, really sad that they can't show any accountability for what money they are getting. That last testifier nailed it right on the head. I hope I can hit it out of the park just like he just did. The Senate committee has been absent from the room. The majority of them have been absent from the room this entire time. They're starting back up.
Back to order. We've already gone a half hour past the time that we had allotted for this. If people want to go ahead and testify, we encourage them to go ahead and put a written testimony in the Senate, email it to the Senate Finance Committee with the testimony that's there. We will have one more testifier before we have to be out of here by 3:30. Zane Barber.
Hi, my name is Zane. I am calling as a student in the Anchorage School District. And I think that we as students, we're often confronted with these big ideas like staff layoffs and program cuts. And that can lead students to wonder if their favorite programs will even exist next year. I think that if we can do anything to help keep programs and to help keep teachers, it needs to be done. I don't want, I am graduating this year, but my siblings are still going to be in the district, and I don't want them to have to worry about if they'll have their teacher next year, or if they'll be, you know, even able to like participate in the sports they enjoy. Or if we don't increase the base student allocation without taking inflation into account even, we'll actually be getting less money per student than we initially intended when we last updated the BSA. So I think that by default, we should be increasing to combat inflation. Thank you.
I want to thank you very much for coming out this afternoon, Mr. Barber. We want to go ahead and close public testimony for today. And so we're going to be adjourning here shortly. And the Senate Finance Committee meeting will meet tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for a presentation by the Permanent Fund Corporation. And then we'll have bills previously heard, and then we'll have the capital budget up as well. With that, we will call this meeting to an end at 3:30.
Wow. All right. Hello, my fellow Alaskans. You guys have obviously just heard the testimony for nearly 2.5 hours now, and they cut me off. I don't even get the chance to testify. I have been on hold now 20 minutes before they even started this committee meeting, and I did not get a chance to give my public testimony. This is the exact same thing that happened when they had it in the Senate Education Committee, not the Senate Finance Committee that it is in right now. It is intentional. I am going to go ahead and give you guys all my testimony here online, and I will be sending it to the Senate Finance Committee at alaskaledge.gov when I am done here, and making sure they get a copy of this so that it is on the record. It was really disgusting listening to all the special interests lining up today, giving testimony about increasing their money that they put in their pocket, and not a single one of them had anything to say about accountability for education in Alaska. Nothing. So let me give you my little 2-minute dialogue that I had here that I was going to give, and you guys determine whether or not you think what I have to say is worthwhile. And here we go. Once again, the majority who profit from this dominate the testimony today. Only two people today have addressed Alaska being the worst in the nation at nearly double the cost of anywhere else in the nation. You have not addressed the declining student base population or their failure to fill the unfilled teachers' positions. All I have heard is a demand for more money. We no longer have a public education system. It is instead a government strings attached indoctrination of our children. Time to completely defund education, remove all federal funding, and rebuild our education in Alaska from the foundation up with what works. Reading, writing, arithmetic, STEM should be the #1 priorities being taught within our schools, but it is not. Instead, you keep repeating the same failed agenda that raises the budget they get with no accountability for outcome. That has a 50-year track record of failure. Parental rights have been removed from the process, and this is something that never should have been allowed to happen. Until significant reform is done, not one red cent should be added. As a matter of record, due to the declining student populations, they should be seeing budget cuts, not increases. Here is one question that I have never heard answered by those pushing this increase from either the Education or the Senate Finance Committee. Where is all the money they are supposed to be using going to come from? All we hear daily is that you at Alaska Ledge is broke. We are broke. If Joe Biden gets his change to the Title IX done, which pushes the indoctrination agenda. They will remove all federal funding from the school if you do not comply. The Mat-Su Valley is the only school district in the state of Alaska that currently has removed a huge portion of that agenda already. What is the repercussions going to be for us out here? Unknown, still undecided. But at least the Mat-Su School District and the borough have openly acknowledged that funding could rapidly disappear. But they believe in providing an education for our children, not the indoctrination that is currently going on. Wouldn't it be a wise decision to get federal funding removed now before it becomes the next issue, the next elephant in the room? Thank you. So that was basically my 2 minutes that I had planned for giving testimony today. Obviously, they don't want to hear my testimony. My testimony doesn't match the agenda that they want the public to be hearing out there. Instead, it was one by one of the educators out there. Ironically, scarily, stupidity, I don't know, label it whatever you want to label it. They want to blame us parents for their failures. 50 years of failures. Alaska used to be the #1 state in the nation for providing an education. That was 50 years ago. As the federal government has stepped in and put more and more strings attached to the federal funding that they provide to our school systems, you can see every time they enacted another act into the schools, the education being provided to the children declines. And it has declined so far right now that the problem we're seeing in Alaska is not unique. This is nationwide. The #1 issue I heard from the majority that testified today is they have these paid for, funded positions that they can't find people to work in. That's why their classroom sizes are so large. It has nothing to do with they don't have the money. It's that they just don't have the staff. And this is not just unique for Alaska. More money is not going to cure that problem. This is a nationwide problem. Why don't people want to become teachers anymore? Well, when you're not told that you're not actually allowed to teach, but you're supposed to be pushing the agenda, who wants to do that? Who in their right mind would want to work a job where the agenda is more important than what your job actually is, which is providing a quality education? All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox here because I have things I need to go and get done, and I plan on being back live again at 5:15 for the parental rights bill that is continuing public testimony at 5:15 today. And if you have not had a chance to call in and testify on this, please line up and call. They are only going to be accepting phone calls from those who have not testified. So if you've already testified on this bill, don't bother calling in. If you've emailed on the bill, go ahead and call in. They need to get your voice on record. This is your chance to do it. Right now, including emails and public testimony, the indoctrination camp out there that thinks parents don't have rights once their children enter into the public school system have dominated the conversation. They all think that parents should have no rights to what happens to their children, our children, once they enter into the public school system. Our rights ends the day they enter into the public schools. That is not the way our education system is supposed to work. There is nothing out there that has ever been put into place other than their own rules within the school districts themselves that takes away parental rights. And they are indoctrinating our children. They are transing our children on a very rapid basis, and they're keeping it hidden. The indoctrination, the transing of our children is being perpetuated and being kept a secret from us, their parents. which is illegal, and we should be handing them documentation stating that we are going to sue the school districts. We are going to school the teachers that are pushing this agenda within our schools. In the Mat-Su Valley, you have, I'm sure if you're paying attention to the school board meetings that have been going on out here, they have been handed legal documentation stating that if they do not change the agenda out here, they are going to be facing lawsuits. We need to be doing this throughout our state, Anchorage especially, Juneau, Fairbanks, where that woke indoctrination is their sole goal, and they have instilled it into their education system so rock solidly that it is going to be an extremely long battle to get it removed back out. I'm a firm advocate of defunding everything that has federal strings attached. 100%. We need and we should be flipping the federal government the figurative bird and telling them we no longer want their support. Start following our Alaska Constitution, which states in it that we are supposed to be maximizing our resources for the maximum benefit of all Alaskans. Federal government has tied our hands together and says we are not allowed to follow our own constitution because what they say is all we're allowed to do. That is not how our Constitution was written. That is not how our nation's Constitution was written. That is not the authority or the position that our government, our federal government, was ever supposed to be put into. This is supposed to be at states' control, states' ability to dictate the future of the residents, the constituents, us Alaskans that live here. Not people in the lower 48 telling us how we are supposed to live our lives. Within 5 short years, if we were to maximize our benefit, our resources to the maximum benefit for all Alaskans, we would need zero, absolutely nothing coming from the federal government for Alaska's prosperity. In fact, I would not be shocked within 5 years that we would find ourselves with a surplus revenue sitting there in another constitutional budget reserve account, which they set up as the government's version of our PFD, which they spent beyond its ever sustainability and then dipped into our permanent fund to make up for their inability to actually manage a budget. If we Alaskans individually in our own households did what they did, you would be finding each and every one of us going to the bank on an almost daily basis and doing exactly what they're doing, figuratively holding them up with a gun, robbing them of all the money they have in the bank, and going and spending it any way we want to. And to put it into more relative terms, I go to my neighbor's house, I knock on their door, I point the gun at them and tell them to give me all their money inside of their wallet. I know how to spend it better than they do. And that's our current structure of our government. We need to get away from that. We need to bring accountability back. First step would be to get rid of all federal money coming within our state and start looking at sustainability, following our Constitution, maximize our resources for our benefit. In 5 short years, we could completely change our state around if we got the federal government and their strings attached rules that comes with the money they give us was completely eliminated. We wouldn't have these climate change activists in Fairbanks dictating how much wood smoke you can burn and put out of your chimney. I was amazed watching them, the climate activists themselves. I've got a question for them. I would love to hear their answer. How much CO2 is in the atmosphere? Give me an honest answer. Do you know that answer? I know that answer, and it's shocking. And we are only just a couple of 0.02 decimal points away from not having enough CO2 in the air to keep our planet green. Instead, our vegetation growing and flourishing, it's going to die off because it doesn't have enough to be able to do its job. Recirculate the bad air and making it back into good air. The more CO2 in the air, same reason why greenhouses pump CO2 into their greenhouses, is because it helps things grow. We are not at dangerous levels like they claim, not when you look at the overall picture, when you can say that it is less than 1% CO2 makeup of our entire air, whatever you want to call it, atmosphere that we have is 0.04. 0.02 is when our vegetation within our state would begin to die off. Let's say a meteor strike, and we have another ice age because our sun gets blotted out. That could very easily happen. So just get a little bit of reality check here. We need to defund our federal government out of our state, make our state accountable for the Constitution, our Alaska Constitution, and do what it is mandated to do within it. Our school systems need to be completely defunded, taken back down to the initial foundation it was principled on over 50 years ago. Bring reading, writing, arithmetic, and add in the new one, STEM, into the program and make them our priorities for our education. Get rid of the 53 different districts that we have out there and consolidate them. Get rid of the triple, quadruple. I could keep going on with that number for the amount of administration that is hired out there. Eliminate them out of the picture. We need to start consolidating our schools. We have a declining student base population out there that is declining on a daily basis. It's not increasing, it's declining. We are at a near record 20-year low for the student base as is. We should be seeing our schools being defunded, not seeing increases. We should see massive amounts of school closures. In Anchorage, they had 6 up on the chopping block. They could have shut down all 6 of those schools and still not created an overcrowding problem in the rest of the remaining schools that they have there. 98 of them in the Anchorage municipality. Excuse me, losing only 6 of them would not have been a big loss. In fact, they have more than enough room, but more than enough empty classrooms to be filled that those students could have been shuffled into. On top of when they're talking about 30 students per teacher, well, it's because they don't have enough teachers. They have paid for unfilled positions. Those jobs are there. Those jobs are paid for to be employing those teachers. They just don't have the teachers to fill them. That's why the classroom sizes are sitting at 30 instead of 20. It's not that they don't have enough money. It's that they can't find people to fill them. Same problem we're seeing around our entire nation. Wake up, Alaskans. Start learning the truth. Start shoving the truth back at them. The more you stand up for our children, the knowledge is power. We need to make sure that we utilize this knowledge and push back on the fake news agenda that they have in play. All right. So I will see you back here again at 5:15. And last update before I go, you can find this video on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all at Politidic, and on Facebook at Politidic Unfiltered. You can find this video on Rumble probably within the next 3 to 6 hours. If you're not a subscriber on Rumble, become a subscriber. If you're not subscribed to Rumble at all, just go up there and download the app. Become a subscriber to Politidic, and that's all you need to do. You don't need to do anything else. Don't sell it to send you notices or notifications. You can completely forget about the app there after that. But I need 6 more people to sign up and subscribe to us so that we can directly live stream to them. So that way we don't have to worry about YouTube banning us for a period of time for something they classify as misinformation and then it not being, it's finding its way over to Rumble. If we can just stream directly over to them, we don't have to worry about what YouTube and their ministry of misinformation out there wants to declare as fake news for the given day, or whatever narrative their fake news misinformation crew out there wants to declare just like they did with the carbon credits, carbon capture, and ESG video that I had, declaring it was medical misinformation. Anybody that watched that video knows for a fact YouTube effed up, and they made me pay the price, and which means you paid the price because you can't find my videos everywhere like you should be able to do. All right, and the last part of this update that I want to give all of you is please go to our website, politidic.com, click that support button. Your support is what makes today possible, made it so that I didn't have to be out there turning wrenches on my normal job so that I could spend this afternoon live streaming these two different committee meetings, public testimony today. I purposely made sure that I had today free this afternoon just for that. And your support is desperately needed. I would also like to point out that I am currently in a lawsuit protecting mine and your First Amendment rights to be allowed to express our freedom of speech and the freedom of press, and especially when it comes to exposing the deep-seated corruption within our political environment within the state of Alaska. Our government is rated number 2 by the FBI as one of the most corrupt governments in the United States. We are only second to those in D.C. And they are trying to shut me up. They are suing me because I exposed their dirt for the whole world to see, something that they don't like. Those puppet masters out there that are controlling the legislators, the school board members, the community councils, those puppet masters that move their strings to get them all elected. They don't like it when you expose their dirt. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, a nonpartisan, it doesn't matter. When you expose their dirt and the corruption and the level of manipulation they have going on behind the scenes, they come and attack you. They cancel you. I paid the repercussions of that drastically since it was written over 2 years ago. And because of that, I watched my shining political, as a citizen journalist career, that I was a shining star. I was rising through the ranks. My political connections went through every level and every branch within our government, including in Congress, in the Senate, and also with the governor and mayors all around our state. And I watched that hard work that I had worked so long to build up get completely flushed down the drain because of the political corruption that I exposed. And this is how they used their political power to silence anyone that exposes the corruption within our state. Same thing you see going on down there in Juneau. Same thing they did to David Eastman. Same thing they did to Shelley Hughes. Same thing they did to Mike Shower. Same thing they did to Robert Myers. I can keep going down the list of those that they have punished anytime you start to expose the corruption or the agenda that is in play that is all political. We should have citizen legislators out there, public servants, not politicians being elected, and that's not what we get. We got politicians that only care about the special interest. So we'll go to our website, politidic.com, click that support button. Excuse me, got a dry throat going on here. And help us battle this lawsuit that we are currently embroiled in, and show your support. I'm going to probably end up having to get attorneys hired here real soon, but stay tuned for the special broadcast that will be happening tomorrow from the Palmer Courthouse. And stay tuned for that. It's going to be really exciting, and I hope you guys can all be there. If you can't, like, share the video while you're watching it. Make sure all Alaskans get to see what's going on so that it's just not them taking your word for it. They get to see it and hear it firsthand. Again, we are uncut, unfiltered, and uncensored by the political elite. We are independent. We don't play their games. We're not here for their agenda. We're here to expose things for what they really are. Thank you guys all again for being here today. Again, like and share this video. We'll see you later on tonight.